happy to be the interviewing the interviewer. And I would like to tell people that this came about because a few of us said, who's going to talk to Greg Peterson and get Greg Peterson's story? You have been a shining light for the bar as a great example of a high-character, ethical lawyer who goes the extra mile. And you're due. I think it's our turn, our time to say to Greg Peterson, we want to know so we can tell the public what you're about. And I'll start with the easy stuff. Tell me about the early years. Where'd you live? Tell me about mom and dad.
Sure, and thank you, Chuck, for doing this. I have been interviewing almost 40 attorneys over time, and then the question has been asked. I've always deferred about who might interview me, but Chuck, you were persuasive, as you always are, because I know of nobody more persuasive, though with trepidations, that one of the great deposers of all time is doing this. But thank you for spending the time, and you have. For those that don't see this on camera, he's got a sheaf of papers. He's been doing some research. As always, Chuck DeAngelo is prepared. About me. Born January 11th, 1951, born on Sturgis Street in Jamestown. Shortly thereafter, my mother and dad moved to Allendale Avenue, 101 Allendale Avenue in Allen Park, which became my homestead for all of my adult years, early adult years. And my dad was a Jamestown native. He went to Allegheny College, Jamestown High School graduate. 1945, went in the Navy. Towards the end of the war, he lays credit to the fact that as soon as he was enlisted, the war ended. He felt the word got out that he was coming. And then went to Allegheny College. While at high school, we'll conclude that. And then, in turn, he came back here, having worked some summers with Gunnell and Carlson, which was a Brooklyn Square news place. He always thought he'd come back and work at and maybe own this newsstand. He loved it. He loved it. Well, as it turned out, that's a newsstand wasn't going to supply family, so he worked for a couple of small places in Erie, Pennsylvania, where my mom and dad lived for a year, in Kearsarge, and then he came back to Jamestown. And then I worked for Jamestown Electroplating, and Jamestown Electroplating was his career. He was there as a laborer, subsequently plant manager, and subsequently a minority owner. And then later on in life, sold it to the Churchill family, J. Churchill.
All along at Water Street?
Water Street, that's right.
Okay.
So my world was Allendale Avenue and Water Street, hence your neighborhood.
Mason carvings up the street?
Mason carvings up the street, exactly.
Huh?
You cross the bridge, cross that bridge, right, and go over and...
To Harrison Street Park?
Exactly. So my dad would come over occasionally and watch me practice football, so Jamestown High School football. We're getting ahead of ourselves. My mother, Gladys Carlson, again, a Jamestown native. And her interesting biography, she came close to dying when she was age 8. She had spinal meningitis, which was a non-curable at the time. And through the heroic efforts of Dr. Vallone and Dr. Blaisdell at the time, they found a exploratory drug. Literally, Dr. Blaisdell flew a plane to Buffalo to get it, to bring it back and to administer it, and it saved her life. So my mother really felt strongly, not only as a spiritual thing, but she was a miracle child. I'm glad she survived, because hence, my parents got married in 1949, and I was born in 1951. So that's my...
Are you the oldest then?
I am the oldest.
Tell me about brothers,
I was
sisters?
followed by my brother Randy, 1952, and then my sister Becky, who was born in 1956. If you're watching this, Becky, I hope I got that right. Randy subsequently went on to become the superintendent of water at the Board of Public Utilities. Married Sue Peterson, I believe, out of your class.
Sue
Sue
Colander.
yes, and had 3 children. Becky went on to marry John Yannick. Becky currently lives in Pittsburgh. John is an accountant. They have 3 kids. And to conclude that part of the biography, I was blessed to meet my wife, Cindy, in Allegheny College. And we'll get into that in a second, too. And I, too, have 3 children and 5 grandchildren.
One day I was looking through some of your YouTubes, and I saw these great videos, old movies, of Christmas and on a horse, the horse farm. Tell me about that.
My dad's parents were Otto and Rachel Peterson. They lived on 356 Price Street. And that's my grandparents.
Okay.
And they both died in 1964.
Oh.
Kind of tragic. Both of heart attacks, and they boom, boom.
Wow.
And that really hurt my dad, crushed my dad. He was an only child.
Oh.
And so he, one day, one of the guys working down there had indicated that he'd had some vacant land in Panama. He was getting to an age he didn't want to get a farm, but he also had 27 acres by itself. So my dad bought it for like $300. You couldn't get to it, landlocked, literally a path. And so my dad thought, well, to keep himself busy and to keep us, my brother and I, out of trouble, we would build a road, we would ultimately build a camp, and he wanted to relive his life of having horses. His grandfather had horses. So we actually have we bought an A-frame, built an A-frame, had a farm called the Ponderosa, and it was there where we had horses. We started with 1, and then we ultimately got up to 5 with ponies. My sister would show horses. There are several videos of our early days putting on Wild West shows. So part of my life was in Panama, New York. And my dad would not really, summer times, he'd work us like crazy every night. He'd get home from work, we'd get in the car, we'd go to Panama, we'd cut trails, we'd burn brush, we would do stuff, all of which was to keep us out of harm's way.
Very cool.
During that high school time period. That was, anyways, that was the Genesis, and we owned it for 25 years, and that a pivotal part of my growth, and it led to me getting to know very well Greg Edwards, Bruce Colton, that Panama connection that became part of our lives in other arenas.
Solid community, Panama.
Exactly.
Interesting, your house where you grew up backs into Allen Park. Some people may not understand, you had one of the prime locations in terms of growing up in the your backyard was a park, city park.
It was a park, and it had everything. And the neighborhood was kids our age. The houses were virtually all identical. They were built right after the war. So we're all kind of what do they call them? Boomers, boom babies. And you'd play sports. I mean, right there, fortunately, there was an athletic field, so you could play baseball all the time. You'd get together during the summer, and you'd do these numbers and play baseball. And if you didn't have enough people to play baseball, there was the clay tennis courts, and I'd go up there and pretend I was Pancho Gonzalez or Ken Rosewall, hitting the tennis ball against the backboard, and occasionally play. I was the city champion for my age group for a couple years. Yeah.
How about the winners on those clay courts? What did you do?
Well, I was ice skating. In fact, days like today, which is slippery outside, the Allendale was bricked, and when it iced over, it was ice, and so I would, more times than not, literally walk down out of my house and walk down the steps with my ice skates on. And you could skate out my driveway, because it was ice, skate up Allendale, skate out over the cinders. It was kind of crazy to do, and then to the ice rink.
Oh, my.
And it was built on top of clay courts. The Wally Carlsons, the John Torreys, Dave Avancics were the guys who spent the time watering it, and there were ice shows, there was speed racing, and another thing we did. My brother was very good at speed racer. And that was part of our world in the winter. So Allen Park very much, not only was the pony rink and all the stuff that was there, Mabel's, where you could buy food. It was very good because we had a lot of kids to play with. And things you don't see now, but you hear people talk about, where my mother at 8:30 in the morning after breakfast would give you a bag with your sandwich in it and go out the door. And you'd hear her scream, "Greg!" And it would either be my mom or dad at, 5 o'clock, time for
You spent all day at the gully by yourself with the kids,
With the-
and nobody asked you any questions during the day when you got back.
No, you were down there, trying to get crayfish, and there was a swimming pool for a period of time.
Yep.
But you just played with kids, and nobody thought ill of it. And
Was there still water in the pool? Because we had some discussions the other day, and one person remembered going into wading length. Was the pool functional when you were growing up?
it was.
Tell us about that, 'cause a lot of people don't know that.
No, there was actually a picture that's down at the Fenton of my brother, my dad, and I. I'm in the pool and the other two. And it was a wading pool. You call it a swimming pool, but essentially nobody could get hurt. But there was a deeper end, kind of sloped down, and if it got up to your waist, it was pretty high. But no, I remember water, but shortly thereafter, I've learned that they were tested. When they learned how to test it, it was bacteriologically difficult. And people were concerned about tuberculosis then,
Oh,
and
boy,
how
I
you
forgot.
get tuberculosis. And talk about growing up, some of my close friends, Greg Bender, Bob Benson, all had tuberculosis.
Oh,
And it affected their ability, mobile ability. We never thought differently because they played with us. They played baseball, but they had limps, they had disabilities, and that was polio. And so that was a fear factor.
what schools did you go to in the Jamestown school system?
Bush, C.V. Bush School, I was in kindergarten the very first year they opened. So when I graduated, I was the first to get through that. And then Jefferson at the old location, which is down there where the hospital is. And then Jamestown High School.
Jefferson was on May Street off Camp, right? The old building?
Yeah.
Okay, and why weren't you at Rogers? Interesting, as Rogers was WCA down on Sherman, but you were a Bush kid. Okay.
Yeah, Bush, there was go up there on the hill, so you had to walk and ride. I mean, most of it was walking and bicycling up to Bush, and our baseball field was Willard. So I can remember more times than not coming home from school, taking a bike, go back up to school, go to Willard, play the game, and come back down.
Was the reservoir available to you growing up?
With what?
Reservoir available to you growing
The
up?
reservoir, yes, of course, right next to, contiguous to Bush School. It was a picnic area. There was a tennis court on top of the reservoir, which most people don't remember.
I don't remember.
If you crawl up there, and I don't even know if you can anymore, you used to be able to see the stanchions, where they had the nets. It
Interesting.
was also a good location to visit, to see the good part of the city. I won't elaborate, but
That's the highest point in Jamestown, too, I
it
believe.
is, yeah.
Activities, church, so what was your life like growing up in Jamestown, New York?
My mother was very active in the Chandler Street Baptist Church.
Okay.
She was a pianist.
Oh.
Her family grew up there at the church. My dad, who was a Methodist, but he then became part of the church. So, religious education was very much part of her world. So the church would Chandler Street Baptist Church, which was on Chandler Street, right across from the First Lutheran Church. So you see the majestic First Lutheran Church, and across the street was the formerly the Swedish Baptist Church, which were the blue-collar Swedes. They're the
Smaller?
white-collar Swedes across the street with the Lutherans, which was the Swedish national religion. So all the Swedes who came over,
Oh,
they were Lutherans. They were this outliers called Baptists. of which my family was part of. My mother then was part of that, and so we became part of that. And that became subsequently the Hillcrest Baptist Church, which is on Halleck Avenue.
And looking in terms of the Swedish heritage, reading some of the books about the furniture industry, there seemed to be a migration from particular cities in Sweden of the gentlemen who came, and it was all gentlemen at that time, came and established as wood shops. Where did Grandpa and Grandma come from in Sweden? What was the city?
My mother's parents came from near Stockholm, and Dalarna is the area. And when they came over here, they all went to Austin, Pennsylvania, and Austin, Pennsylvania was a big wood making area.
Wow.
And subsequently found their way to Sheffield, Pennsylvania, to Jamestown, and ultimately in the meat business. So for those who, again, are watching this, my grandfather, Carl C.S. Carlson, had a market stall in Brooklyn Square, in City Market, and it was C.S. Carlson's. And then subsequently, his son, Henry, my mother's brother, took it over, and he had the Viking Food Market. For those that may remember, that was all, that's all my family.
Very famous, the Viking food.
Yeah, so that.
Where did Grandpa on the other side, Dad's side, come from, and Grandma?
They were born in Ludlow, Pennsylvania, and Sheffield, Brookston, Pennsylvania. Their grandparents came over from Sweden, and I'm not sure much about that. So, ironically, though, my grandfather on my dad's side, Otto, was a furniture salesman. So, Monitor and Maddox and Union National, places that, for those who read the history, he had all his. It's what he did. He'd get up Monday mornings and take off, come back on Fridays.
Big jobs. During your growing up years, anything stick out to you? And I'm talking about 6 years old to 16 years old, maybe 18 years old.
Well, sports was very much part of my world. I mean, I was very normal. The Little League Baseball, the Babe Ruth League Baseball, the Midget League Football, and all of those have kind of sidebar stories. I didn't fully appreciate at the time, but I subsequently involved in the professional baseball teams here and the history of the Falcons and Expos and stuff. And often you talk about guys that were heroes in the early days, the Pollocks, the Schmidts, the Newmans, heroes of the early 40s, icons when you talk about history. Well, they were my coaches.
I want to talk about that. Let me give you a quiz. You ready?
Yeah.
So the South Side team, what was the South Side what?
Blue Devils.
And Coach Joe,
Albano.
Coach Pete,
Wilson.
Coach Bob.
Benson.
You got it, man. You have 100% on that test.
Don Abramson, just to throw in another one.
Tell me who you played with. Who are the dudes? Some of the guys you played with.
Oh, well, Schmirker was one of them. Frank's a big guy.
Big guy.
Big guy. And, Danny Sutphin, Bobby Benson, Johnny O'Neill, Jack O'Neill. Those are the South Side guys. And we had good success. I mean, we won a lot of games.
Baseball, who was your coach?
Coach, my dad was in the minor leagues.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, and then the coach going up, we had a guy named Schaefer, who played, as it turned out, with the Jamestown Falcons, and then in Babe Ruth, it was Johnny Newman.
Oh, my.
For 3 years, Johnny was my guy. Big, he was huge. He could hardly walk.
By the way, minor league, little league, Babe Ruth, right?
Yep.
People don't remember the minor league. There was a minor league before you got into little league.
It was called the Red Wings.
Oh.
And George Alm was the manager, my dad was the coach, and we won the league. And then VFW was the next level. And then the Babe Ruth Collins Sports Shop.
College Sports Shop.
Collins Sports Shop, yep.
Vikings sponsored a team. There were a lot of local teams sponsored by local business people that helped build the baseball program here. We talked a little bit about family, but I want to dig a little bit deeper. How'd you meet Cindy?
Cindy, she's born in Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, Beaver Pennsylvania. Subsequently, her mom and dad moved to Westfield, New Jersey, which is south of New York City. And then they had a place in Conneaut Lake, Pennsylvania. Little place where, in addition to where they had a place on Conneaut Lake, her grandparents had a place too. So she, being a smart graduate of Westfield, New Jersey, was looking for schools, but she kind of liked the idea of Conneaut Lake, which is in Crawford County, Pennsylvania. Allegheny College is there, and so she went to Allegheny and chose Allegheny. I went to Allegheny College. My dad was so I was a legacy. He went there as well after the service. And the story goes, well, it's true. But it has the benefit of being true, Chuck, that I was a senior in college, and she was a freshman.
Oh,
Now, you might think that was a mismatch.
you robbed her from the cradle.
You would think that, but that's not accurate, because I'm from Chautauqua County, and she's from New Jersey. I
Okay.
mean, if you don't think that balances the...
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. So, anyways, it was at a fraternity party where I was a Phi Delta, and our house was off campus, and she was there because we were entertaining the freshman ladies. And always interested to know who the freshman ladies were. And she came up, cute as a bug, and came to me and says, hi, I'm Cindy Howard, and hi, I'm Greg Peterson. By the way, you look just like my brother. How's that for a lead?
I love it.
And so
Handsome guy, too.
I said, oh, really? I've never had that as an opening line. And so off we chatted, and I'll tell the story on camera. I'll blush along the way, but I walked her back because she was cute. I mean,
Absolutely.
to say I was not interested, I'd be lying. So she made the overture, and we danced, whatever we did, and we walked back up to her dorm because I had to walk up the hill back to her dorm. And I thought I'll take a shot at it, and I kissed her.
First time out, you met her.
Yeah, first time. So I took advantage of it. I said, was that like kissing your brother?
Did you say that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best.
Well, she laughed and remembers that to this day. Didn't play well, I don't think. But that was I thought, well, there's a concluding event. To complete the cycle of this whole thing, she started it, I'll end it.
That's the best.
Subsequently, we did date.
How long did you date then, before you got married?
Oh gosh, it was about 5 years.
5 years, okay.
My part, I went to Jamestown High School. We might get back to that, but Jamestown High School, I graduated in 1969, went to Allegheny College. Majored as an economic major. Graduated in 73. This will shock people, but I was a Phi Beta Kappa there at Allegheny.
Were you?
Yeah.
That's great. At Allegheny.
Yeah.
By the way, must mention, Allegheny was a top-rated, very hard school to get into before, and I think it still is. But you finished Allegheny, now what?
And I went to Dickinson School of Law
Where's that?
in Carlisle, Pennsylvania,
Yep.
near Harrisburg. And anyways, back to Cindy. So we were dating my senior year. And then I decided to go to Carlisle. Not
Yep.
quite sure how the rest of us would work out, but we continued to stay in touch. Dated on weekends, we could get together. She would come down to Carlisle, I would come to Meadville.
How long a ride?
It's about 4 hours.
Oh,
So you had to think about it.
it's big.
Not every weekend. So we carried on a relationship. And subsequently, when I graduated from law school, which was 76, we got engaged and got married in 1977. Cindy graduated in 3 years. She's the smart one. Cindy's the smart one. I'll admit it.
Undergrad back then.
Yeah, 3 years.
Pretty
She
tough.
blows through Allegheny in 3 years. And then she applies to law school, gets in, follows me down to Dickinson for 1 year, but I just graduated. And so, I'm not trying to get too far ahead, but I then took a job here in Jamestown. She then transferred to Buffalo.
Oh,
So she transferred to Buffalo to be close. She lived in Buffalo for a year. We got married. We then lived in Dunkirk for a year.
while she's in law school.
Yeah. So she
Wow.
finished law school after we were married. So that's kind of the Cindy piece.
She had brothers and sisters?
One brother, two brothers, Robert and Jimmy. Her dad started and operated and owned Howard Industries, which still exists today. Cindy's currently the president and CEO.
What kind of business is it?
It's a chemical tolling business. Chemical means they do a lot of work with Shells and the large chemical businesses, and essentially take product that they have and they then give it to Howard Industries to break it down, to add extra elements to it,
Okay.
reprocess it, put it into bags, so now it can be used for different plastics or different colors or something.
Interesting. How many employees, roughly, over the years?
Oh, could be, they've had plants in Texas and
Oh, my.
Delaware and stuff like that. Now it's just Columbus, Ohio. So it's probably now 15 or so. It's sort of downsized.
And she's still running it?
Still running it.
Wow.
Still running it. And Cindy was recently, for those interested, interviewed by Dennis Webster about her career being a first of many things. First
Tell me about the first.
Law clerk in the Chautauqua County court system. She clerked first clerk, aside from being a female. Period, for Cass and Adams. And she was.
That's Willard Cass.
Willard Cass, Superior Court Judge, and Leetown Adams, who was the Supreme Court, County Court Judge. And so she was the first. And then was the first president of the Jamestown Bar Association. She was first partner at Wright in Hampton, first general counsel at Bush Industries, first general counsel at Lakeshore Savings
I
Bank.
forgot about Bush, her being with
Took
Bush.
both of them public. And then variously with Howard Industries. So she was the first. We honored her at the Jackson Center as being the first female president of the Jamestown Bar Association.
That's neat.
Yeah, so
Very
she has and continues to accomplish quite a bit, so
And 3 kids.
3 kids.
Independent woman, married to an independent man, raising 3 kids in Jamestown, New York, and running back and forth to Columbus. Oh, my.
Yeah.
Tough.
So we had a lot
She's a
going
tough
on.
gal.
A lot going on.
So tell me about Amy, Megan, and Brent. I know, of course, a lot about the children because they grew up around the same age as my children, and they're wonderful kids. But
Well, Amy's the oldest, born in 1980. Amy graduated 1998, I think, Jamestown High School. She subsequently went to Kenyon College and then to New England School of Law, got her MBA at Suffolk in Boston, and was the Assistant General Counsel for the Detroit Tigers for about, 10 years. Founded Rebel Nell, which was a significant jewelry company that employs underprivileged women who've had kind of tough knocks, and all this is in Detroit. And she's been on the Martha Stewart show, Harry Connick show, Fox News. I mean, she's been covered nationally for what she's doing as a social justice business
That's neat.
enterprise. So very, very well done, and a lawyer.
by the way, she went to law school, then went and got an MBA?
Yeah.
Holy moly. For those who don't know, that's a lot of school,
Out of school.
and tough school.
And Megan, a second, 1982. She also kind of followed the path, went to Denison, and then went to Cooley School of Law in Lansing, Michigan. Graduated, she got her MBA also at University of Buffalo. So she's also a JD MBA, was counsel at Hershey, and the Hershey Chocolate Company, married Adam. I forgot about Amy's. Amy's married a guy named Antonio, and they have one son. Amy actually, Megan married Adam. They met at school. He worked at Hershey as well. Then they worked at S.C. Johnson in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh,
They have 2 children. Unfortunately, Adam died in a tragic accident, and so she's currently a single mom raising 2 children.
very difficult.
But despite it all, doing well. And I have a 3rd child, son Brent, who was born in 1985. He Jamestown, then he went to Western Reserve Academy in Hudson, Ohio. He went to Kenyon, and sort of a singer, songwriter, currently in the Washington D.C. area, and also works for the Washington District, or D.C., Department of Development, and there does a lot of work on the Anacostia River.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so his day job is working as kind of a
So he can
civil
enjoy his
servant.
love.
Yeah, and then, of course, his real love is
Yep.
singer-songwriter, which he does very, very well. So that's sort of the rounds out, and
You
he's
met-
got 2 kids, Brent's got 2 kids,
How old?
Megan's got 2, and Amy's got 1.
You know, one of the things that I recall vividly is how the Petersons circled the wagon when Megan went through that very trying circumstance. And you couldn't write it better than the way your kids, your wife, you responded. Megan knew she wasn't alone. Just sends chills in my body. I saw you soon after at a baseball game, Jammers game with the 2 little ones. You made it as normal as you could make it, and we know she's got Peterson blood, so she's going to make it. You know, also, we were talking about your role with the grandkids, et cetera. You're a very busy lawyer. Wife's a busy lawyer and business owner. And you and I talk, and I always hear about different things you're doing with the grandkids, trips you're taking, places you're bringing them. I mean, you even took the grandkids through the tunnel last year. And, you know, our friend Ed Tomasini, who's filming this right now, knows about the tunnel. And the Swanson boys know about the tunnel. And the LaPrioris know about the tunnel. You got to tell people about the tunnel.
Well, clearly a pivot point for everybody on the south side, including Ed, and of course Ed, who's filming this, a central location, a mecca, if you will, to get baseball cards and football cards and food and candies, was Linwood Dairy, which was owned by Ed's dad and Ed's uncle, Ange and Jeff. And so we got to know Ed that way, but that was not far from the gully. And the gully, which is Allen Park, which was given to the city, we've learned subsequently, by the Allen family, is a terrific place.
Unbelievable.
We all worked there for the city at various times, at least I did, and we explored there. But between the 2 gullies, there's a road. There's a road, and on one side is the bandstand, and on the other side, the gully, which goes towards the park area, towards
The pool.
pool, yeah. And there's a tunnel, which is inviting. And so one would have to traverse the tunnel, and it's a tubular tunnel. You can walk through, but you got to stoop. And then when you get to the center of that area, which is where the street is, it opens up. It opens up. And for a time when we were kids, they had somebody put a bench there. I mean, like somehow you got exhausted and you had to sit down. But, so we kept always telling my kids and my grandkids, you got to do it, got to do it. Well, one day we did it. We got everybody these flashlights, and they got their boots, and they loved it. My grandkids going through the tunnel, and then the next day they had other grandkids go through the tunnel. My sister then went through the tunnel because she was so scared. And so it's now become a kind of an annual event. Let's do the tunnel. And I recommend it. And you, Chuck, and I had talked, and you subsequently took your kids through it, and
It's fun. The gully's fun. It identifies, I didn't want it to come out, but I guess today is a good day to tell Ed that I bought one of those wax packs and got one of the high-end Yankee cards from Linwood Dairy that he didn't get.
You know, he's still hoarding the cards. And when they closed up, you know, sitting
You
on
got the
back.
boxes?
Yeah. He's looking at us now. And one time he actually gave me and just so you know, I never opened that pack, Ed. It's on my, I never know, it could be,
So, your law career,
yeah.
and Sherry and Marty and Annette, and let's talk.
Yeah, I think this is the part which will probably be shown at my memorial service about the law career. Because everything sort of flowed that I subsequently done publicly from that relationship. And how did it start? I was thinking about that just the other day. I was in law school at Dickinson, and my dad, who was a vice president of Jamestown Electroplating, belonged to the Manufacturers Association, which is a very active organization in Jamestown. Sherry Cadwell was an attorney extraordinaire on many fronts, but he represented corporations, businesses. So he was the general counsel of the Manufacturers Association and would go to all the events with his clients, which was the who's who in Chautauqua County. And so my mom and dad graduated with Sherry's wife, Carol, both in the class of 45. Sherry was a class in Jamestown a year before. Anyways, they knew each other. So as the story goes, at one of those manufacturers meetings, Sherry, being Sherry's, got a hold of my dad, said, hey, what's your son doing? What's your family doing? Explained, hey, one's in law school, and I'm sure the conversation went such that if he's interested, we at Cadwell and Sharp being Bob Sharp, we always looking for summer interns. And he was quick to point out we never hire anybody. It was just Cadwell and Sharp summer interns. So my dad told me that one time, and I said, I don't have anything to do. And my dad surely didn't want me just hanging around at home. That never happened. So I worked as an intern with Sherry and Bob and learned a lot. Learned a lot during my internship. And when I went back to Carlisle, senior year, I sent a letter, an application for formal employment, knowing full well they had turned down Mark Hampton, they had turned down Ward Westerberg, other people that we've known who had been interns or were interested in working for them. Just, they were happy.
Yep.
So I did it more perfunctory. At the same time, I'm dating Cindy, who I really thought I'd end up in Carlisle, go to Harrisburg, and work down there. Nice area. Anyways, shockingly, they accepted my application, called. I came up, we did a brief interview, and they said, yeah, now's the time for us to add on. And so I accepted her. I think if Cindy were asked, she was kind of upset that she thought we'd be staying down there and not coming back here. But it turned out well. So I came back here. She finished up law school.
You're an associate then?
I'm definitely associate, working with Cadwell, Sherry Cadwell and Bob Sharp. Now, the Sherry's practice was principally corporation, though we were general practice. We did everything, wills, estates, no criminal work, no domestic relations if we could help it. Bob Sharp did real estate, a lot of it, tons of it, all the Farmers Home Administration, which was huge at the time. He was their general counsel. So we did a lot of real estate. And Bob did some divorces, some paternities, he was more the general practitioner. So I got a little bit of everything. And I was just thrown in because they were busy. They were very active. Sherry would throw me into union negotiations where I didn't even know the people, the little in the company. Just, Greg, I can't be there at the beginning of negotiations. I remember it's Van Stee Corporation. He dropped me off. Just say, go in and start to talk with Fred. Anyway. And so the guy walked in and goes, are you Sherry? It was tongue in cheek. And I go, I'm not. I'm not supposed to start the negotiation. I don't even know what I'm talking about. And I was an exercise. So I was thrown right into the fire. He said, this is our demands, this is our demands. And of course, then let me take a break here. No idea. So that was it. I'd go workers' comp. I'd do anything Sherry or Bob clearly didn't want to do. You just went in with no advanced knowledge. It was learned by fire. We all gone through
Yeah,
that.
you learn general practice that
General
way.
practice way. And if we had one paternity case, oh my gosh, I bought a book. Bob Sharp bought a book, treatise, somebody on paternity. Greg, read it. You're going to defend her. Or defend him, I think. So that's what the practice was like.
So just the three of you to start.
Three of us, just the three.
And where's your office?
Our offices was right on the corner of 3rd and Main, on the 3rd floor, with First National Bank building, I think. It changed names a lot.
Yep.
So we were there. It used to be the old Seidman. Seidman used to have an office there.
Oh.
But, so it was Bob and Sherry and a bunch of secretaries. We were very active. And then shortly thereafter, like within 2 years, Bob Sharp's wife Linda's parents owned a rope company in Cleveland, which made industrial, so when you have cargo ships and you see the
Big rope.
big ropes, they come off the ship and they tie them up. That's what they made in the Cleveland Harbor area. They both died. Both parents died. So Linda inherited the business. And Bob gave the practice up to go run the business.
Oh, my.
Exactly. So there was an oh my moment for Sherry and I. I'm the kid. Wet behind the ears. Sherry got, holy cow, we got farmer's home, we got this, to keep it all. How are we going to do this? So fortuitously, Sherry also did a lot of estate planning, trust work, and with kind of high-end clients. One of the trust officers in town was Fran Grow.
Mm-hmm.
Fran Grow was a trust officer, subsequently intimate and involved with the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation.
GROW.
GROW. He was a trust officer, and the law firm for Marine Midland Bank at the time, which Fran was at, was Phillips Lytle. Phillips Lytle, Hitchcock, Blaine, and Hubert.
Oh.
And the attorney who did all the trust work was a guy named Bill Bain, B-A-I-N. So Fran Grow, knowing that Sherry was in a sense of extremist, looking for people, had no idea, and other sole practitioners who were kind of Sherry's age, stepping forward to say, why don't we join, because you need somebody. He goes, I don't want to create more of a problem. I don't want somebody my age, I'm at this age, I'm late 50s, and I got a kid. It's the two of us, and we got this whole blanket of people who are corporations, and WC Hospital, and Lutheran Social Services, and, the Resource Center, and da-da-da-da-da. We represented all these people, and they required hands-on. So we were really running. So as it turned out, Fran Grow introduced Bill Bain. Bill Bain at Phillips Lytle, Hitchcock, Blaine, and Hubert, one of the big Buffalo law firms at the time, kind of had decided internally that the Buffalo market had been carved up. There was the big Hodgson Russes, there was Jacob Fleischmann's, there was
Yep.
all. So they thought maybe we should go outside. So Bill explored with Sherry the possibility of having an office in Jamestown because they were impressed, as most lawyers and I was, with his client list. Like, wow. Why don't you just keep the clients and we'll do all the work for you? Which was a saving grace for both Sherry and I because
Unbelievable.
we were at wit's end and we were referring work out all over the place. We didn't know who was even representing on these OSHA matters, on the environmental matters.
Uh-huh.
Who did you talk to, Greg? I was just making people up that I saw in our books. So anyways, I'd like to think we merged with Phillips Lytle, Hitchcock, Blaine, and Hubert. They probably saw this as an absorption, But that was the beginning, and I was 3 years into my practice with Phillips Lytle.
Wow.
And the idea was to provide something that this community did not have at all, a local presence, Sherry and I, but with all the horses that you could possibly want with a big law firm. A unique relationship.
There were no others at that time,
None.
local.
Not local. So it was
I'm not
unique.
sure there's any since either.
No, that's another story. They've tried, but it's very hard.
Yep.
Very hard. So, and I must say, the acceptance factor within the bar wasn't overnight. You know, they were concerned about what would happen to the practice if a big law firm showed up.
Yeah.
So it was part of the public relations for Sherry and I was, don't worry, it's still us.
Yep. Buffalo Lawyers versus Jamestown.
Yeah. It's still Sherry and Greg.
Yep.
So we had to kind of work at that public relations aspect of it, while at the same time with our clients, they're kind of ecstatic knowing that they can still talk to us. But, oh, by the way, we got guys that know 10 times more than we know. And even though the concern was the rate, would their law rates be greater than ours? I said, that's not the question. The question is, what's your bill going to look like? Because as we know, a bill is a function of rate times time.
Right.
The rate may be high, the time will be a heck of a lot less because somebody's going to know what they're doing.
And I have a story about that. I asked you when Kevin and I were talking about transitioning, and I said, you got anybody at Phillips Lytle that can help us with, that's handled law firms? As a matter of fact, I do. And we paid for 2 hours at that rate for what I would have paid somebody else 10 hours at maybe a more different rate, but it probably wouldn't have been much different.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me today, would I spend that same amount of money to get the service I got from that nice gentleman at Phillips Lytle? Absolutely, all day long.
Yeah.
You're right about you got to go by the rate and the hours. The other point was, I think, fair to say that Sherry and Greg had allegiance to their clients and sending everything out to other people that were not connected to you is not as satisfying as having your own firm that can handle cases for you that you don't handle.
Yeah.
Like estate litigation.
Yeah.
Phillips Lytle could handle that for your clients. Joe Mason, my father-in-law, was a close friend and client of Sherry Cadwell. Negotiated against Joe, but handled his estate or planning matters. That's the Sherry Cadwell model. You make friends, you're a local guy, you take care of everybody. Where was he from, Sherry?
Sherry was a Jamestown native.
Jamestown.
Yeah, Jamestown
Okay.
boy. And Sherry grew up on the north side. So, you know, he's very much part of the community. Incredible individual. And very, very giving of his time to the point where he was a busy guy. He had 3 kids. And yet, when I came back, just an example, I'm playing softball. I'm, still the athlete.
Slow pitch, right?
Slow pitch, Westburg Electric. We won a lot of championships. And Sherry would come to the games.
No kidding.
I mean, I was blown away. He didn't have to come at all, but he kind of treated me as the son, I guess, he didn't have. He had 3 daughters. Now, I don't think we ever actually said that, and Carrie, if you're listening to this, I hope you can check, you can correct me. But he did that. He went to things that he would not have to go. Was just that kind of guy.
Very well respected in the community.
Yeah.
He was a gentleman, gentleman's gentleman.
So I became exceedingly loyal. I did have a time, I got to confess to it, I was an associate, a 4-year associate, and you're kind of wondering your career path is becoming a partner and all of the stuff you think about in a bigger law firm. I'll tell you, Saperson Dave, big law firm, saw how we were successful with Phillips Lytle here. Buffalo law firm, Jamestown, and others had tried, Hodgson Russ and others had tried, but they placed non-local people here to try to create a practice. Didn't work.
No go.
So that failed. Saperson Dave saw that and reached out to me. Figure I'm a prime candidate, 4 years associate, and they wined and dined and going to make me a partner, through money and everything at me. And it was frankly tempting. You're just at that vulnerable age. And I kept him in the loop on everything, so there was no secret. And he was very honest with me. He goes, Greg, I think in the long run, your investment with us, Phillips Lighting will work out well, but you got to do what you got to do. And that was persuasive. It worked out incredibly well. I did say no to Saperst and Day. They subsequently hired another local attorney, and they opened an office for a short period of time, and then that didn't work out as well, and it faded. But my decision that moment was critical for me and for Phillips, not for Phillips, for me, because of Phillips Lighting, I stayed with him, became a partner shortly thereafter, and because of Sherry's involvement, we just continued to be very, very close. And I can elaborate a little bit more, Chuck, if I could.
Yeah, please.
Because I've gotten sort of recognition of certain things with like the Resource Center. 40 years, they have a night at the ballpark, Greg Peterson night. Why? Because I've been involved with 40 years. Well, how did that happen? Peeling back the onion, Sherry had a developmentally disabled brother, Sam. And Sherry was asked to be the original founder of the Achievement Center.
No kidding.
And so he was the founder, incorporated them. And as they were kind of plopping along, and you got involved in assisting the first director.
The Achievement Center is the predecessor to the Resource Center?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So it's all, they just changed their names. And they had, it was at some point, ARC, it was the disabilities was somewhere in the title.
Association for Retarded Children.
Yep, exactly, ARC.
ARC.
And of course, that name now just
Yeah, no, we don't say
kind
it.
of, you don't say it. But that was part of it, ARC. And they had a new dynamic executive director called Mike Raymond, who was professionally over the top. It was a time when the Willowbrook decree, and the state had, under court decree, had to get rid of all those homes, get people into community homes. Mike was at the forefront of that, saying, I got ideas. So the state used him as a model, and he created all these homes, and we had to find ways to do all these homes, and he was off a mile a minute. And Sherry, who was sort of their general counsel, said, Greg, I can't handle Mike. He's a great guy, but too much energy. You're young, stay with him. And we did. I did. And I stayed glove in hand with Mike for all the golden glory, fast track years of the Resource Center, where I was on the board with only one other person who was a developmentally disabled parent. And everybody else was parents. And they could have 3. I was one of 2 at the time, John Reel and I. So I'm a kid. But I remember our first $1 million budget, when we reached $1 million. And I'm like, wow, all these parents were kind of like, $1 million. Well, now it's well over $100 million. So I've been through all that, but that would not have happened but for Sherry. My involvement with the corporate world, which I think we succeeded as a successor to Sherry's engagement with a lot of folks, was through him being involved in the Manufacturers Association. Previously, I said to my dad, he was their general counsel. Well, it got to a point where, Greg, let me make a call. And next thing you know, I'm the young kid on the board. They're always looking for a young attorney. I mean, you know that. Yep. Every organization is looking for young, free legal advice. Yep. So I became the secretary. Now I'm dealing with the CEOs, because at the time they're all locally owned. I mean, think about Blackstone and Dahlstrom's and all locally owned guys. So I'm dealing with the presidents, CEOs. I'm the kid. I'm the kid. Unbelievable exposure. No other lawyer, nobody else would have any other access, but I'm the kid because of Sherry, which then led to me being integrated into their worlds, being the only general counsel for the Chamber of Commerce. So all that business part Chamber Manufacturers Association. I was the guy, I was the kid. And so hence that all had wonderfully with the younger plant managers and all that, I had relationships. Now Sherry, that was Sherry. Sherry's relationship with the Ken Strickler.
Very nice man.
Wonderful guy. And Ken sort of took me under his wing because
Banker?
of Sherry. Banker. Before that, he had a typing company.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Strickler Typing.
Yep.
And the Stalker Region Community Foundation had just pretty much started.
Oh,
No money. You know, a couple of $1 million from Linnaeus and but they had a dream. They had a dream. And so they wanted somebody young with Marion Panzarella and Carl Kappa and Betty Linnae and Betty Erickson. So Ken said, I'll have Sherry, is it okay if I ask Craig? And so he did. I was on the board. Next thing you know, I was the president for 5 years.
Community Foundation?
Stalker Region Community Foundation. And we went, during my time period, from 1 million to 10 million. And part of the networking at the time, and I sense of pride, I knew because of my involvement with certain trusts that trust officers of banks, of which there were many in the area at the time, hated scholarship trusts.
oh.
People died.
Why?
Here's why. Because they had to administer them. They liked the money. You know, I'm going to set aside a trust for the benefit of scholarship for kids that go to Allegheny College.
Yep.
Now you got to deal with who do I decide who gets the money? Pain in the neck. So I took it upon myself, just networking, selling with every trust officer in this area. Excuse me, working with Surrogates Court. And the trust officers made a deal. I said, here's the deal. The Stalker Region Community Foundation will administer your scholarships if you give us the principal. You got to give it to us.
Yep.
We got to own it. But we'll give it back to you to invest on our behalf.
Interesting.
To them, it was dying and going to heaven. Because all they wanted was the money. They didn't want to administer it. So we went to the Surrogates Court and called Cypre documents, one after another, and we quickly grew to $10 million, which was the seed for the scholarship funds, which are now massive at the Community Foundation. Now, that was a way to enhance our principal, a way to get us in the scholarship business, which then it leveraged many times over since then. But that was fun for me and you had to have enough knowledge to know there was somebody in the trust business that hated it.
I was going to say to you earlier, networking is great. But if you don't deliver the goods, if you don't do the research behind that to figure out how to move the trust, Cypre or otherwise, it doesn't last. Because the business organizational people that run businesses can separate talkers versus doers.
Yeah.
So they obviously built a reputation based on your doing the work. And a lot of people don't understand it takes a lot of hours of reading and reviewing and frankly talking to the Sherry Cadwells of the world. I remember personally talking to the Richard Fezzinens, Lucian Ledestros of the world and saying, what do you think about this approach? Boy, oh boy, it's like reading a book in 1 hour.
Yeah, no question. It's going to school, and you can't. You got to be blessed, frankly, and I've been blessed and lucky on so many fronts. But that's at the Community Foundation, Ken Strickler, which subsequently the same Ken Strickler got me involved in the Fredonia Foundation.
Oh.
I was involved in that for many, many years. So as you look through a resume and you see a bunch of stuff that may have my name attached to it, and you peel back, how did it happen? It's not like Greg Abenicio did it. It was guys like Sherry got me involved. It got me involved dealing with, I'll drop names. The Murray Marshes, the Norm Bergs, the Gary Cradens, the Reg Linnaeus, the Jack Martins of the world, Mike Raymonds. These were incredible doers. I mean, during the go-go years of Blackstone, YWCA buying up every piece of property in your neck of the woods
Oh, yeah.
and had a vision, or Lutheran, Norm Berg, deciding that he was going to buy up everything and turn it into the campus that it is today. I was part of all that. I was the kid.
You know the word you haven't mentioned that's critical to being the kid and working with those people? Trust. They trusted you.
Well,
And they don't give that freely or easily. I'd love to know how you got there. What was it like to convince them that they could work with you and trust you?
well, the appropriate introduction. But, it's like anything else. You can be the introduction, but until you get in, it may get you into the door, but it may.
That's it.
That may be it. So.
The rest is you. The rest is on you.
So, I'm a good listener, and you got to deliver the goods and be responsive. And I guess if there's a message to the lawyers in the world is, as you listen to their clients' needs, is, don't tarry. I mean, keep them in the loop. Sometimes you don't have the answer, and I didn't have answers. Lord knows. I'm the first to admit I'm not the smartest kid in the block. But I kind of knew how to get the answer, and I tell them if I didn't have the answer, I don't have the answer, but I'll get it to you. And you do. I mean, you're the classic example, and I want to blow you up with a glory gun, Chuck, but you are the classic.
But you listen to them.
Yeah. You gotta-
And you don't tell them necessarily what to do. I think one of the things that troubled me over the years about dealing with the law as a lawyer, and I think you're making the point, is that we work for the people. We don't make policy. The question is, a client should tell us what they need us to do. We would then tell them the best way to get there. And sometimes we can't get them there, but at least we told them that we would try, and they trusted that we would. But I don't like to be the policymaker. I leave it to my clients to tell me what they want to do. And as long as it's ethical and a legitimate reach, I'm okay with that. I'm looking for a quote of yours that I saw about what you're about, and it went to this trust issue, and I'm having a little trouble retrieving it, but I'll find it.
It's the kind of work he does. Look at this stuff here. It's a sheaf of stuff.
It's all about, to me, earning it. I think those people weren't easy sells. They couldn't have been.
No.
Okay, they made their way the hard way. And a lot of people you're talking about, they didn't come from money. Sherry Cadwell did not come from money. Your mom and dad were on Allendale.
Yeah.
You didn't have a mansion. Okay, they made their way each day, and frankly, when they saw somebody, and it's the thing that we haven't talked about, the Sherry Cadwells of the world, Murray Marsh, they loved it when a young lady or guy came along that wanted to make their way. They loved getting us started and helping us. So let me get to, I've got some other interesting points that I'm not going to let go of. Tell me about the other players in Phillips Lytle with you. You added a labor guy, management guy that I had to fight with on occasion, Marty Idzik, who is a class act.
Yeah, let me go through that chronology, because I've been blessed in the sense that I've really been a one law firm guy. I mean, most of the interviews I've done, they've had to pick and choose and change. There was a lot of diversions along the way. I've been lucky, and I mean that seriously. Sherry Cadwell, again, back to Sherry, created a wonderful location. We landed well. Phillips Lytle, I sing its praises, and I will talk more about them soon. But in the chronology of things, we knew, or Phillips Lytle knew, that it was Sherry, Greg, essentially, you hate to use the term rainmakers, but we were. Make sure we attend to the needs locally, but as far as the grunt work, let us, Phillips Lytle, Buffalo, subsequently Rochester, New York City, all those other firms, let us do that for you, Greg. That's what we want to have. You do. So we did that. But they also knew, in order that we weren't rogue, that they better get somebody down here who was homegrown Buffalo Phillips Lytle guy. And a few people came down, they kicked the tires and chose not to. And then subsequently, Marty and Patty Idzik came down, and they kicked the tires and stayed. Marty's has a tremendous ability as a lawyer, but a wit, and he immediately ingratiated himself into the community, into the Bar Association, which is a remarkable thing from a guy who was otherwise very much part of the fabric of East Aurora, I think it was, and Phillips Lytle. He was a blue blood. He was a Phillips Lytle blue blood Buffalo guy. Took a roll of the dice and came down here and started anew. And not only his personality, but Patty's as well, as a nurse, a hospice nurse, just a saint among saints, and lovely children who we kind of grew up with our children. And so Marty became very much part of us, so it became the three of us. And our age spread was just appropriate, you know, Sherry, Marty, and me. So it was like 10 years difference.
Okay.
And that worked out well, and that was by design. That was by design. And then subsequently, we've had several attorneys who've been with us in the law firm, and have gone on to great things. And it continues. I mean, many have gone on to Buffalo, some have gone on to other law firms in the area. And so Phillips Lytle continues, but it's in a little bit of a different mode, where I'm of counsel here. We have attorneys who come in from Buffalo, Rochester, Erie, spend a day or two here every week, and it's just an interesting model, but nevertheless, the service is the same.
Servicing the clients.
Yeah, servicing the clients, the service is the same. I'm still taking a phone call. So the model that was created or envisioned back in the late 70s continues today.
Wow. It was the late 70s, the Phillips Lytle
yeah,
start?
yeah.
Wow.
So it
worked.
It worked. So it's almost been 50 years, which is hard for me to believe. And part of that 50-year story, I'm living in other areas as well, I just want to get it on tape, is that your former partner, Richard Fessenden, was the attorney for the Village of Faulkner, and then became assistant corporation counsel for the city of Jamestown, in addition to his private practice, and then as a result resigned from the Village of Faulkner. So they needed somebody. So they, this is early 77. And I'd passed the Pennsylvania bar, and it had been admitted into the Pennsylvania bar. So when I got done with Dickinson, I took 2 bars in 3 days. I went up and took the New York State at UB writing exam and the multi-state. So
Okay,
writing, multi-state, and then that night drove all the way down to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and took the Pennsylvania writing exam.
Oh, my.
So that was bang, 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 and passed them both, as it turned out. And I subsequently, Pennsylvania let you know you were admitted much quicker. So I literally went down to Pennsylvania, and a guy named Bill Bevavino, who I didn't know, literally walked into his office, says, "Hi, I'm Greg Peterson, I passed the bar. I need to have somebody swear that I'm an okay guy." He goes, "Are you?" "Yes," signed the letter, and that was it. And so I was admitted to the Pennsylvania bar, but I'd passed the New York bar, but had not been admitted. So they did all this interviews down at Faulkner. But one of the trustees at the time, again, back to Sherry Cadwell, worked at Blackstone.
Yeah.
So he allowed us out, "Hey, Sherry, do you know anybody?" And he goes, ultimately, "You're a very young guy, I'll have him come down." So they interviewed us and others in the area, I think there was 4 of us. And I got the job. I only can suspect now, many years later, that Sherry probably was asked by that fellow trustee who was a Blackstone guy a little bit more, and somehow a decision was made.
And you had great competition. There were other very, very good lawyers,
gosh,
well-respected. And you came out of the pack, which was a blessing. How many years now at Village of Faulkner?
48.
48?
48.
Wow.
And
A long time.
much,
It's longer than I've been practicing.
and many stories of most of which we won't bore us with all that, but another video, another time. But that's been wonderful. But again, Sherry Cadwell, the Resource Center, Sherry Cadwell, Stalker Region Community Foundation, 40 years, almost 50 years with Village of Faulkner, 40 years with Sherry Cadwell was sort of in the middle of it. Yes, I ran with it, but he's the guy that opened the door. And I would hope that if any other lawyers are looking at this, that's something we will convey and help younger attorneys, just at least open the door. What those particular people do with it, that's up to them. But
you have to have a skill set other than knowing contract law or knowing zoning law. So here in a small community, and you have citizens that want X, Y, or Z, and you're in the unfortunate position of having to advise a village board that they can't do something that they want to do because a local resident wants to do it, or it's not okay for other reasons, state law, federal law, whatever. How do you get there? How do you command the respect? And you went through a lot of good mayors over the years, probably 5, 10. I don't think more than 10. But I remember a handful. I can get you to 5, I'm pretty sure. What do you attribute your ability to stay in that kind of business? Very political, not, because Greg Peterson's not political, okay? How do you get there?
well, I think part of it is just being responsive and to be a person. I've never treated myself or presented myself as a stodgy lawyer. Let's tell a baseball story. Let's do this. I'm just a normal Joe. I'm not wearing the fact I got a JD or anything else on my sleeve. I'm not that. I'm just definitely not that. So I'm a normal guy. And I like to think that carries over where they can ask you normal questions. And you never get caught up. I try not to get caught up in, if it looks like there's personalities which have political tones, then I really try to get both sides, or even the village. One of the things I've done, I did this very early. If there was an issue, a legal issue, one of the things lawyers could do is simply say, I'll take them to court. I'll take them to justice court. No, I call the person, the complainant. I'll call them. All of a sudden, the air goes out.
Decompress.
And all of a sudden, it's just an easy misunderstanding, rather than to just go back to your office and play lawyer. Now, that's just selfish, too. Then I don't have to play lawyer. It's easier to resolve it without having to go that way. And even to this day, I think that's a skill set, which is Mayor Marty Idzik, Sherry Cadwell, those guys, if it looks like before they get into an arbitration, before they get into heavy-duty negotiate stuff, let's talk about it. Let's just work it out. If we can. If you can't, you can't. I mean, to say we run into a couple issues of Faulkner.
That's not necessarily good business as a lawyer, because you just reduced your billables.
That's true. But it's still.
That quote that I was telling you that I wanted to attribute to you from some time ago, quote, "Much has been given to us and much should be returned, and so I, as part of that, have always looked forward to returning it in some form or fashion." I guess there's that community service streak thread in you that you've always thought, and I want to get into Jamestown baseball and some of these other subjects. There's the Jackson Center, there's Jamestown baseball, those are crown jewels, I call them, in my friend Greg Peterson's life. There's Russ Dietrich. There's a funny episode of Bill Clinton, president, coming here, and I'm on the advance group because I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, and I'm trying to get up front with my wife and some friends, and there's Greg Peterson with a press pass in the very front row. And I still tell the story because you've been front and center on a lot of things. IDA, you've led the way as counsel there, and that's not an easy sled. It's tough to get economic development in Jamestown, and you've been one of the key people that have kept this place going. And we all know about the Northeast. including the Ohios and I call that still part of even though it's Midwest, I guess, Pennsylvania, but we've kept a lot of things going here. You have been, you've interviewed sports figures, politicians, Chautauquans, local folk, what we're doing here today. Bob and Mindy Rich, who had no connection to Jamestown, New York, became connected because of you. You got a book published about baseball, Across the Seams, which you were a major part of. And if you had a Jamestown lawyer who was working with a Buffalo firm, class firm, Phillips Lytle is, would you expect to see him at State Line or the Rollerball? You're a complex individual. So going all the way back, tell me about your dream for, I'm going to do the easy one, where we're sitting, the Jackson Center. And then I want to do Jamestown baseball, okay? So tell me what you were dreaming, thinking, and how'd you get it done?
There's about a 6-hour video that Dennis Webster did. You can watch it. But let me give you the Reader's Digest. First of all, if you can keep in mind what I just said about Sherry, making the decision to merge with Phillips Lytle, which then they embraced the concept of us being in the community.
Oh, good point.
Phillips Lytle embraced us. So the managing partners felt that was critical that we continue to be involved in the community, whatever form that should happen to take. And it took early on with the Community Foundation, because as you know, you have to keep track of your time. If you're a lawyer, you're part of a firm, you keep track of your time. And if the firm, we maybe have budgets, but the firm, our firm, Phillips Lytle, God bless them, gave me leeway and they gave me credit for community time. That, not every firm does that. They want billable time.
Yep.
This was critical for me, for my personality, but also critical for the firm because they saw that there was benefit. If I'm the secretary or involved as a president of a community foundation or manufacturers of the chamber, they're dealing with businesses. They could see that. And so that was just a mindset. Cadwell, Phillips Lytle mindset that made Phillips Lytle really unique, that they encouraged community involvement with their lawyers. They still got to do billable time, but part of my budget included that. So I could and did get the blessing of the firm when I sought to explore this Robert Jackson Center concept. Now, how did that happen? Two things. One is Justice O'Connor came here in 1996, dedicated the statue. So that's pretty cool. So I'm a camera guy. So I'm videotaping
Big guy.
Justice O'Connor, there's the Jackson family, all these people. My wife was actually the driver of Justice O'Connor. So she drove O'Connor
Oh, neat.
down from Chautauqua to here. So there's all this connectiveness. At the same time, our firm had merged with a law firm in Fredonia called Colasano, Summer and Eads. Charlie Colasano had retired, sort of a Sherry Cadwell thing. Charlie had retired. It was just Jim and Tim Eads. And they needed help. And I'll back up later on, but Jim had a book in his library. It was on Robert Jackson, authored by Eugene Gerhardt.
Jim Summers.
Jim Summers. Jim Summers had a book, and just in his library. I pulled it out, and I kind of said, well, I just saw this. I don't know much about it, so I read the book. Gene Gerhardt wrote it in 1958, a lawyer in Binghamton, New York. So I looked up Martindale Hubbell, typical thing you would do. I can't imagine he's alive, but it turned out he was. So I get in a car and go down with my
Binghamton?
camera. He's alive, and I'm going to interview him
Wow.
about Jackson, because that was the only book he had met Jackson, he'd dealt with Jackson. He did this book as the most unauthorized, authorized biography there ever was. And he actually gave me the tapes he had of his conversations with Jackson.
Oh, my.
So all of this is kind of happening.
What were the tapes on?
He was talking to
Cassettes?
What it was on? Belts.
Belts.
Belts. Remember Belts?
Wow.
You probably don't remember that. So it then led to me interviewing Carl Kappa. For Carl was getting an award on behalf of the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation, and I was I think, one of the awardees. And I wanted to interview Carl about Carl.
Dear man. Very,
So
very
he
important
finally
man.
permitted me to do that at his office down on Allen Street.
Mm-hmm.
So during the course of that interview, I asked him about his life, his living on the South Side, growing up as a kid. Who was your hero? Now, I would have thought any good Italian-American hero would have been Joe DiMaggio. I mean, I knew the
Yep.
answer. I was wrong. It was Robert Jackson.
Really?
He thought if anybody, from our area who went out, who prosecuted, in the 40s, Robert Jackson. And
Did you know him personally?
no, but he had no knowledge that I had read the book and, that I was tinkering with, maybe we should do something. It was all tinkering. So, he was explaining it. I go, holy cow. And he was not well. He was not well. He had cancer. And so I said, Carl, what do you want to do next? He goes, well, you should probably do something for downtown to help support downtown because I believe in Jamestown and we need something more. And it left it at that. Subsequently, I'm at an event where Betty Linnae was at and told Betty I'd met with her neighbor, Blackstone, near Crawford, and they talked about this guy, Robert Jackson, and he wanted to do something downtown, and she just sort of said, well, if you're interested at some point, let me know, and maybe, I know Carl, but I don't know him well, but maybe we can do something. I'm collecting this things here. And then I talked to John Marino, no, that's not correct, Tom Cardman, at the Gebby Foundation. I was having dinner with him because we did work for Gebby, and Carl was at a table, and I go, another table. I said, Tom Cardman, meet Carl Kappa. Carl Kappa wants to do something with the Robert Jackson, which was bullshit. I just made it up.
Wow.
Carry on, because, I met with him, we're done. And so Tom goes, what's that all about? I said, I'm thinking outside. We ought to have something downtown to honor Jackson. At the time, there was if you remember Pine Street, next to 210 Pine, there was a small museum for Lucy Desi.
Yes.
Or Lucy, and it was just posters.
Yep.
And kind of things. We should do something. There was another store that was empty. Let's do something with Jackson posters. That's all I wanted. And so I said, what the hell? So I remember December 14th, coming up. Met with Carl, Betty. Again, they knew each other, but they didn't know each other. And Tom Cardman at my office. I said, this is crazy, but again, we should do something to honor Jackson. Justice O'Connor said we should honor him. All this horseshit.
How neat.
And they just sort of patted me on the head, saying, well, if you come up with something, let me know. That was December 14th, because I happened to note it in my calendar. And some other parts of it, but I had also previously interviewed Stan Weeks, because I was doing part of my interviews with old lawyers, and this is 2000, and about the one day in time when Jackson's funeral was here. Jackson died, and they had the funeral in 1954 at St. Luke's. And every justice of the Supreme Court, all 8, showed up here.
Wow.
First time ever they'd ever left the court in mass. They took a train to Jamestown, got off the train, and they went to St. Luke's. And the Bar Association had a dinner with all the 8 justices at Moonbrook.
Wow.
So I'm interviewing, unrelated to this whole Kappa thing going on, the Sam Prices, the Bob Booties, the Wayne Herricks, the Stan Weeks. Did you go to the service? Yes, of course. Did you meet and have lunch with those guys? Yes. What do you remember? Well, they remember everything. If you're having lunch with William O. Douglas or Felix Frankfurter, you remember what they drank and ate, and
It's unbelievable.
you know. So I'm interviewing all these guys. So all of this is coming together. But I remember Stan Weeks, this is like a year before I met with Kappa and Lene, saying, if you ever wanted to do something for Jackson, you should think of the Scottish Rite Consistory, because we're going to probably sell it.
That came from Stan?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Stan was a long-standing Mason. Jackson was a 33rd degree Mason. Weeks a 33rd degree Mason. Weeks knew Jackson.
Wow.
And so that was all kind of way back here. So anyways, I met with Kappa and those guys about a little kiosk. And then I'd heard that Bill Daley,
Nope.
Ed, you've heard all this stuff before. Bill Daley, I didn't know him from Adam. Little did I realize that my paths would cross with his later on in life. But Bill was looking to buy this thing, this facility for a call center.
Call center?
Call center.
Oh, boy.
Remember that, those days? So some Mason called me and said, if you're interested, you might want to get involved with this facility, which was in really rough shape. What we're seeing today is not.
Right.
I mean, the bones are the same, but nothing else. And so I met Carlton Winchester. I said, Carlton, I understand there's a contract. Yeah, we're going to probably consider it. I mean, I don't know if we want this to be a call center, but we got to do something because we're running out of money. This place is falling apart. We got to do something. And Bill's got some ideas. I said, well, Jackson, I've talked to Betty, I've talked to Carl, but nobody's committed anything. I mean, zero.
Okay.
$0. Just an idea. And so I said, what if I put in a contract? And what if I take a shot? Because Jackson didn't live here, but he was very much part of this. He sat right there. There's a plaque. We got pictures of him sitting right there. He was a member in good standing of the Scottish Rite Consistory.
Wow.
And this was the facility. He was a member since 1930 here. And he's kept his membership through his death. So he was part of this. I go, well, let me take a shot at it. So I signed a contract, Greg Peterson, with these guys, subject to a lot of, and signs and all that. Cindy didn't know about it. And
She didn't know it?
And I put in purchase price, just simply matching what Bill Daley did. That's all I said, matching.
Ah,
So, guts. And
you ain't kidding.
so they said, all right, we're going to have both you guys come and present to the body politic of the Scottish Rite. So Bill went, we flipped the coin. Bill went first. And he did his thing. And then I go, we're going to match Bill, first of all. And I know you guys can stay here. You're Jackson's people. You should be here to support the Masonic memory of Robert Jackson. So whatever he's offering you, I'm
Good
going to
angle.
offer it, and you can stay. You don't have to leave. Well, that was the card to play. Now, the only question was whether they wanted to sell it, and they ultimately charged it, did it. They ultimately approved it. And so now I gotta get out of this personally. So I met with, right here. I called Carl, Betty, Harold Adams, who was Robert Jackson's nephew, Dan Bratton, who I had just had lunch with, who was just sitting up in the third row. I said, come join me, you might enjoy this. No idea what was going to happen, other than to say, hey guys, this is what I had. So literally, Carl's sitting there, Betty's sitting there, Tom Cardman sitting over there, Don Bloomquist, Phil Morris. And I'm explaining, I'm sitting here. We got approval, and, but it's subject to a mortgage, subject to this, a whole lot of things. Carl goes, I think it's perfect. I'm in for a $500,000.
$500,000.
$500,000. I never asked for a nickel. I haven't asked. There's no ask yet. Betty puts his arm around, I'll never forget this. And Ed were you here, Ed?
That's the one that I was not.
Okay, maybe I was even filming it. Anyways, Betty puts her arm, goes, with tears in her eyes, knowing that Carl was not well. If you're in for $500,000, I'm in for $500,000. Holy shit, I just got $1 million. Two people who can make it happen. And so I kind of like, I think we'll accept the offer, and we'll create a Robert Jackson Center for Justice. It turned, that was the first name. It changed. Like, oh my God, I'm dazed. I'm really dazed. Like, wow, this is unbelievable. So let's take a quick tour. So we went downstairs, and if you look downstairs, there was a sink. And in the sink was just simply a crusher of food, what do they call those things? And it said Jackson on it. And Carl goes, this is perfect. It meant to be. Just said Jackson. It was the name of the manufacturer of this
The
particular.
incinerator,
What do they call it?
disposal,
Compact food.
garbage disposal?
Yeah, disposal. Crazy. And so they're laughing. And Dan Bratton, who's sitting back there, grabs me and he goes, what the hell just happened? In all my years of Chautauqua fundraising, I've never seen this. He
You
goes,
ain't kidding.
Now, he had just retired from Chautauqua as
Okay.
president. He puts his arm around me, goes, I'm your executive director. I was going to move to
Wow.
Arizona. I'll stay here to help you get started. I'm in. Oh, holy shit. I got $1 million. I got Dan Bratton. I didn't ask for any of this. It happened. It was all serendipity. You can call it what you want. Cardman's over there. And I go, Tom, Gabby,
Give you money?
well, are you in? He goes, I can't really commit, but I can, I guess, say words. If Carl's in, Betty's in, and you got Dan Bratton? Holy crap. How can we say no? Well, subsequently, Chuck Hall, he was president of Gebby at the time.
Oh,
They gave us a unrestricted grant.
no kidding.
Whoa. So $1.5 million. So we're now, I didn't know what we were going to do with 1,000 square feet, let alone 19,000. I had no plan. In fact, Chuck, he was funny. He goes, you got a $500,000, but can you send us something? We shouldn't give you money with no letter or something. I go, yeah, we'll do that. So this is a really long answer to your question, but it is bizarre how it happened. There was no master plan, no 20-page dream. If somebody said, Greg, show me what you were thinking. No, I say exactly what I'm thinking. Oh, I'm thinking a kiosk down on Pine Street, and I ended up with this. And of course, what we're in right now was the Star, a theater, a theater which could have a dream. So many 6 hours worth of conversation. You can watch it from Dennis Webster. Ultimately led to us buying it, approving it, creating a board which included Willard Cass. That was part of the deal. Glad to have Willard Cass as a board. Raleigh Kidder, Bruce Janowski, Randy Sweeney, Betty. Carl, because of his health, would soon give it to Jeanette Carlson, his sister. And sorry if I missed somebody here.
And over the years, you talk about your existing staff is wonderful. You've had quality people here. You've got some special role players in John that have been instrumental in taking it beyond Jamestown. At one point, you were quoted recently that what Robert Jackson did and what he stood for has a special significance in our current world. Can it be any clearer that identifying the line between appropriate conduct during a war and inappropriate conduct is difficult to define today as it was 80 years ago, 100 years ago? It is. And Jackson Center's front and center on that discussion. Very impressive. Jamestown, New York, small community, and Greg Peterson, I'm going to say what a lot of people have said along the way, and I'm going to say it for the record. You made us a destination site with Robert H. Jackson. You made us a destination history point. We became relevant with the Jackson Center, which is hard to do when you're 7 hours from New York City, 3 hours from Pittsburgh, 2.5 hours from Cleveland. I mean, look where we are geographically. I want to talk about Jamestown baseball.
Yeah, and let me just I'll conclude by, I think that if there's a message, and I don't want to sound vainglorious,
Yep.
but I instilled by literally my parents and my and Sherry, is don't fear failure. Go for it. I mean, if you believe in it, and you got to believe in it to sell. I mean, I think I've had the ability to have some power of persuasion, but to have the gall to reach out to Chief Justice Rehnquist. Would you like to come to Jamestown?
He didn't go out a lot.
No, he was sick and not well, but he made one exception to honor his boss, Robert Jackson, which then led to Chief Justice Roberts honoring his boss, William Rehnquist, in this whole lineage. And the fear of not failure of, dive in. What's the worst that could happen? And as would have it, we had a product, again, built by hundreds of people. I mean, if there's, I get the credit for a lot of stuff. But behind this, like Ed Tomasini over there, he's filmed absolutely everything for 25 years. There's hundreds of people who've dedicated their time, talents, monies to be part of the Jackson Center, and perhaps I'm the stem winder to make it happen, but for them coming up with ideas, but for them coming up with money, this wouldn't be. But a benefit is here in little old Jamestown, New York, we do have somewhat of a tourism destination location, which I don't think any of us founders 25 years ago would have dreamed that we would have today. People ask, what's the biggest thing you're surprised about? We still exist. I mean, how many not-for-profit startup organizations, we've all been involved, which you have an idea, and it's usually centered around some individual who's got the passion, and when that passion either dies with the person or dies because the passion dies within the person, that's it. It's sort of just, well, I'm no longer intimately involved with this location. I am, but I'm not. And they got a board, they got their own passion, they got their own direction, they got everything. And they roll me out now as the golden white-haired guy in the beginning. I mean, it's like that, there's always one guy who happens to be alive, let's talk about it. And I'm that guy. But it's just so many other people, but it's the fear not to failure. And I think that segues off into baseball as well.
Before you go there, one last point about the Jackson Center. It can't be lost on all of us. Greg, this was a reach. You say gull, I say Greg Peterson reach times 10. And you pulled it off. I think if you asked 10 people, was this possible? 10 would have said no. Greg Peterson said yes. Now I'll do Jamestown baseball. So I want to talk to you and see if I got this right, okay? Falcons, Expos, Marlins, Tigers, collegiate baseball. Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, there's a bunch in between, but there was sort of, during the rich product era, Bob and Mindy, about every 2 years we had some new affiliate, but basically it was, after the Expos, we were closely aligned with the Marlins. That was principally it. There was the Pirates and the Tigers, and
Oh, we had Pirates?
yeah, the Pirates. In fact, Pirates at the end.
Was our buddy Danny Lanetta involved with Marlins, of course?
Yeah.
And Expos,
Expos and Tigers.
and Tigers, of course, today.
So,
So let's talk about Jamestown baseball.
well, I
And-
guess you have to go back to me playing it, me having it turned out, have as my coaches, the Johnny Newmans, the Johnny Pollocks, the Bob Schmidts, whose their kids went to school with me, Johnny Pollock, Bob Schmidt,
Oh,
and
neat.
Jeff Newman. You didn't, at the time, didn't mean a hell of a lot. In fact, one of my baseball Little League teammates was Hugh Imus, whose grandfather was Hugh Bedient,
Oh, yeah.
the superstar Boston Red Sox World Series hero from Faulkner, New York, and we did much to honor him. But I remember seeing Hugh wearing a hat, standing in right center field, watching his grandson. Typical grandfather thing to do.
cool.
It didn't mean a lot until one day, and this is where I could probably start. I'm at the game with my dad. It was an old timers day recognition, and I'm sitting in the grandstand, and they were honoring some old time guys that were just sitting there. Hugh Bedient, Swat Erickson, Ray Caldwell. And I, as a kid would do, pull out a pad and get an autograph, which I kept. Again, at the time, didn't mean a hell of a lot, but subsequently a lot. But that was the connection to major league players who lived from this area, came back to this area. So hence kind of an interest when the Tigers, baseball left Jamestown, professional baseball, 1957. That was the Pirates. Don Clendenin was on the Pirates at that time. And that was the last, 57, and then didn't really come back until 61. Entered Russ Dietrich. And I remember my dad buying what was called a Regit ticket for kids. Regit, Tiger spelled backwards.
Oh, funny.
I found it one the other day, and I gave it to Sports Holiday. I go, here. And I had to go to the game. And I just was mesmerized, and you get the autographs. And subsequently, you followed their career because they were the Tigers. And some of those guys went on to the majors. And then things passed, and you're just casual interest. But then came back from law school, and Dan Linetto was the general manager. And I knew Danny, but not that much, but I was involved with the Resource Center. We wanted a fundraiser. And Danny would come back from spring training around April, try to put together a team and sponsors and tickets and everything by himself so that they could play in June. So I said, why not? Fear not to fail. So I reached out to Dan. I said, on behalf of the Resource Center, we'll sell season tickets for the Jamestown Expos. I'll sell them for you. You don't have to worry about it. Got you covered. And we'll take 40% of the gross. I tell you what, Dan, I will guarantee that your net will exceed your gross the last 2 years. I'll guarantee that.
With 40% off the top.
Top.
Wow,
Okay?
that's a big promise.
Big promise. So he said, sure, because he had nothing to lose. Have at it. And it was a low bar. But I had on the board of the Resource Center, not I, but on the board of the Resource Center at the time was Merrill Rosen, who could sell snow to an Eskimo. Mike Felice, WKSN.
Yeah.
WJTN, WKSN, they all had family members who were developmentally disabled. And I said, here's how we're going to raise money. We got 40% sports fans. So I know that all of your sponsors, you don't have to share them. That's a trade secret. But let's sell, because we're going to sell like crazy. And I've got my corporate list and my MAJA and the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm just going to go hell-bent for election because it's for the Resource Center.
Yeah.
It's tickets. And we'll even let them use them as they see fit. So if they buy a season ticket, they can go to all the games at one night. That
Yeah,
concept which is still used.
and nobody was doing it then.
Yeah, nobody. So we went crazy. And one year, our take was $20,000.
Wow.
And they previously, there's way over the top. So and we had the president, Charles Brofman of the Montreal Expos, fly in to give us the check.
Wow.
This is the big dog. Think Seagram's, Brofman, Seagram's, owner, Montreal. I would go to Montreal as a guest of theirs with Cindy.
No kidding.
And it cost me money because she would buy a fur coat. It was fun for me because I'm on the bench with Andre Dawson, Tim Raines, and those guys. That was that time period. Good Expo time period. So I'm sitting there I'm picture taking, and they were playing the Mets, and I was having 2 or 3 years. And Andre Dawson, I'll tell this one story on my wife. He's there looking at me, he goes, is your wife here? And no, she's out shopping. Ooh, we go, ooh. This is Dawson. He goes, yeah, it's going to cost you a lot. I go, what do you mean? She's going to buy a fur coat because it's so inexpensive in Canada. No, you don't need a fur coat. I got back that afternoon, so wrong. He was so right. She's got a fur coat. She's got a fur coat. It's so cheap. I saved money. You've seen that, Chuck, how she saved money by buying this fur coat. Like, would you buy it ever? But no. So then Danny had to get it across the customs and all that other stuff. Then now Danny's part of this subterfuge of getting it.
Conspiracy.
So anyways.
Statute of limitations ran, you're okay.
So anyways, that started the interest was the Resource Center. And we actually got on national TV. Warner
Oh.
Fusel, This Week in Baseball, came and did a whole coverage on the Resource Center, this program, and how
cool.
the Montreal Expos then, which included Marky Grissom, got movies of this.
remember Marky.
Marky Grissom working with the Special Olympic kids of the Resource Center. So it was Resource Center, Expos, Money for Danny, and it was on
And
national
Major
exposure.
League Baseball,
Major League
MLB.
Baseball. All that happened. We did so well that the general manager of the Montreal Expos came and I thought he was going to congratulate me. And he took me out for dinner, congratulated me, and then said, "You did so well, we're going to cut your percentage. You're going to cut the percentage, and but we'll let you do it again." I go, hold it. We got to work twice as hard to get to the same number. That doesn't make any sense. Throw me a bone. It's Bill Stolman. The guy threw 2 no-hitters in the major leagues. Bill Stolman, Bill, throw me a bone. What's the bone? I know the Montreal Expos uniforms. They work their way through AAA, AA, down to A. We were A. And then you throw them away. I know that. Give them to us. Just give them to us so that I can give to the Special Olympic kids a Major League Montreal Expos uniform. Just give them to me.
How funny.
That's the bone. He wouldn't do it. I said, perfect. You made the decision. I'm not bitter. Thank you very much. It's been a fun run. We've gotten all the wonderful, feel-good things we could get out of this. I'm not going to have us work twice as hard to get to the same numbers. So, hasta la vista. We shook hands. That was it. Now, what they didn't do, they didn't keep the list of the people who we contacted, the contact list. Proprietary.
You had it.
I had it. So all those names of the presidents, CEOs, phone numbers of the Weber Knapps, the Blackstones, everybody who bought 8 tickets each, because we asked, and they didn't say no. They didn't have.
And you didn't have to give them.
I didn't have to give them, and nor did I. I said, sorry. That was a decision you guys made.
Big decision, though, because you don't want to lose your relationship with them either, so you got to handle it diplomatically.
So we handle it, we helped them to some extent, but I didn't give them the list. And so Tom O'Reilly, and so we continued the relationship, and
Mike Ferguson.
Mike Ferguson.
Riley, you had some great, and what people don't know, it's hard finance-wise because you created a program. I raised my kids at the stadium in those games. It was an event. It was just not a baseball game.
No, that's right.
You had all kinds of different entertainment going on, and you marketed it a lot different than traditional baseball had been marketed, and it brought people in. And it's not always an easy sell in Jamestown, New York, and the tickets were not prohibitive, the price. You had Ruggiero selling, hot dogs at a reasonable price, and you sold a lot of people, and I could take my kids and my wife to dinner here and have a great time and watch baseball.
Absolutely.
The star of both of our lives, different ways, but the same star, Ross Dietrich. You called me one day and said, we're going to rename the stadium. I want you to help Chuck and be on the committee. What that means, for those that have never been in a program with you, that means that Greg does all the work and you just join as a committee member and he shares the spotlight with you. I've been there, done that, and the renaming, I was proudly part of that with you. Tell me what happened, how that's connected to Jamestown baseball, and what your message was and is in having it be the Russell Dietrich Stadium. Russell E. Dietrich.
Yeah, Sam Teresi talked also about it during. this.
Wonderful guy.
And so Sam was all part of that too, and so it
Sam,
wasn't,
yep.
it wasn't just me. But it was a time where we wanted to get recognition of the stadium. There was actually a movement afoot, as Sam talked about selling the naming rights, selling them.
Oh, I remember that too.
And I was, and so we kind of filled that void. And nobody, Russ is Mr. Baseball, we, Chuck and I, and Sam, everybody, probably Ed Thomasini, all owe at some point their employment status to Russ Dietrich. He was just a guiding light, incredible. So to honor him was not a difficult thing to do. And so you had to finesse it a little bit because you didn't want Russ to know. And that was a major thing, was Sam had to do the stuff behind the scenes, city council-wise.
Oh, yeah.
All the politicking. No, and there was no issue, it was just how to formally, legally do it. And at the same time, how to get a sign up without him saying that there was a sign, because we were gonna pull the sign down. I mean, he had to fix it. And so what was the finesse? The finesse was the Babe Ruth was gonna honor him at the Babe Ruth World Series banquet, giving him an award, on the field award. And it was that award, and I was the MC. Mm-hmm. I was the MC, so kind of Russ Dietrich, da-da-da-da-da. And Ed may find a little familiarity what happened to him last night. But it was all about Babe Ruth. And the players and stuff, and the car came out, the Les Ostrander Babe Ruth car. I mean, a lot of pomp and circumstance. And he's there sort of taking it all in, and then all of a sudden, Sam marches out with city council. And we would never have a vision of this unless Bob Swanson, I'm gonna give him his due, he filmed it.
Oh,
With his VHS, he's kind of filming the whole thing, not knowing what was gonna happen. He thought it was just a Babe Ruth thing. And he filmed it, so God bless him. So Sam comes out, he calls a meeting to order, Mike Mistretta, city council chair, roll call, naming it Dietrich Park. I'm tearing up as I'm talking about it, and it just blew him away. Shock value extraordinaire, and hereafter it'll be known as.
the big day.
It was a big day. And then, as you were walking out, they unveiled the sign, which is, they somehow covered it all up, and I can't believe he didn't notice something. But he did. He played it off, and there's videos afterwards, which I took all of that. But yeah, that was a big night, big day for all of us. 1997, I think.
2 points I want to make. Is it fair to say, Russ figures large, obviously, but there were a number of points at which we wouldn't have Jamestown baseball if it wasn't for Sam Teresi hanging tough.
Oh, Sam, on many instances, as a director of development, specifically, there was, because it's not a moneymaker. The stadium doesn't make money. The rental payments, nothing.
Yep.
Makes sense, but it's a park. Nobody ever wanted to say it's an albatross, but it's a big, huge park that has to be maintained. It's owned by the city, and Sam found ways to get funding to do the upgrades, to do the stadium, to get seating, to lighting, you name it. And even though we were under strictures from minor league baseball, that we were always never in compliance, he always had variances, he finessed all that. He finessed all that so we could have baseball. And that's little understood.
Little understood.
And,
Well, we just made it more understood.
Yeah,
In our lifetime, you want to make sure we both wired the same, that we took care of the people that we respected and made sure that we thanked them. And I'm taking it that making sure this renaming got done was, in large part, you're saying to Russ Dietrich, thanks, man.
Oh.
Thanks for everything.
and it was unanimous and on every front, and all of us, now you don't even think twice about it. And we're blessed, we are incredibly blessed. That was done in '97, we're in 2025, and Russ is still among us, and still an impact guy. You can't say how wonderful that
Yeah,
is.
We're blessed.
Yeah.
So how'd you get in the front row with a press pass at the Bill Clinton Chautauqua appearance? How the heck you pulling this stuff off?
Well, my trade secrets. So many Bill Clinton stories. One that you're probably referring to, this was in 1991. Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton was, I love this. Hillary Clinton was the speaker at Chautauqua.
Oh, okay.
Hillary was the speaker because she was the Secretary of Education at Arkansas, and much had happened to enhance Arkansas. So Hillary was brought up as an exemplar. And oh, by the way, she brought her husband, who was the governor of Arkansas.
Oh, I don't know that story.
So she was the platform person. And, they recognized, the governor's here. And I'll back up one step, because this is critical. This is the critical piece. My cousin, Larry Beckman, was the offensive line coach for the University of Arkansas football team.
Oh,
Coach Mark Hadfield.
Razorbacks.
And he was up at our Peterson, Ponderosa, Panama, my Panama. And, to me, he's a celebrity. He was University of Florida offensive guard during the Steve Spurrier days. I mean, he was just a big deal. So Larry was there, but Arkansas never went to the Cotton Bowl. Never. Because Texas always won that division. And only the winner of the Southwest Conference went to the Cotton Bowl. Mm-hmm. Arkansas was always 2 or 3. We always said, basically, I remember this distinctly. Larry, if you get into the Cotton Bowl, my dad said, we're taking the whole family and we're going to be down there. We're going to support you. We're going. Never thinking that meant anything. Well, sure shit, the next year, Arkansas is in the Cotton Bowl.
Wow.
So my dad gets tickets. We all go to the Cotton Bowl. We meet up at the hotel the night before with Larry. And there was everybody from the state of Arkansas was at the hotel. It was like the Hilton, including the governor, Bill Clinton. Governor Bill, just the governor.
Wow.
No big deal. But he was the governor, and he was slapping everybody in the back, because this is a big deal, Arkansas.
Oh, big time.
And so I have a picture of my dad, and Bill Clinton with a big arm around him, 2 of them. So I've got this picture. And it's cool. It's just and my dad was not known to be a Democrat. And so, but it was cool. He was the governor. Big shit-eating smile, shit-eating smile, my dad with the governor. And I blew it up to an 8x10, and he kind of had it. So fast forward. The next following summer, there's Hillary. And there's Clinton. And I had a sign that said, "Go Hogs." No, "Go Hogs." And I had this picture. And I knew that Dan Bratton was going to entertain the governor and Hillary at his house, the president's house. And I knew that Dan had invited every Democrat in Chautauqua County there to that reception. I go, well, I know where Clinton's going to be, and I would like him to autograph this to my dad, because I did that stuff. So, all you guys, and you were probably there. Every Democrat in the world, the Fred Larsons, the Papilias, everybody, and they're all there. And I kind of come in the side door, and they're all dressed up because they're going to meet Democratic early royalty. I mean, he wasn't the president. So. And I walk in with shorts, and I'm walking in with my poster and my 8x10 photo and a pen. And I'm just I don't want to make eye contact with anybody. I'm just kind of going towards the dining table, which is at the front of the house. That's where the dining is. And I knew Juanita, I knew the Brattons. It's not like I didn't know them, but I didn't belong in that service. So I get there, and sure enough, the door opens. Pure frickin' serendipity. I'm getting to the food table because I'm just kind of getting out of the way. I'm going to grab some food and kind of sit in a corner. Door opens. And there's Dan walking in with Governor Clinton. "Greg, come over here. Say hello to the governor."
Oh, my.
And I'm the first guy because I'm going to the table. The door opens. Governor Clinton, Greg Peterson, we met. "Really? How'd we meet?" "We met at Arkansas in Dallas, for the game. And I wonder if you would please be so kind as to autograph this picture of my dad. Here's a picture of you with my dad. It's his, I made up something. Special birthday."
Wow.
He goes, "Gladly." So we sat down. We sat down at the table where the food was. Moved the food around. And he's just bullshitting. He's thinking I'm a somebody. He goes, "Tell me about it, Larry. I'm telling about my cousin, telling about Mark Hatfield. Didn't Troy Aikman ate our ass? UCLA beat Arkansas." And he's just talking. And he signs this, and I go, "Will you sign the poster?" "Surely, absolutely. Hey, go have my wife sign it." So he screams into the crowd. So the crowd is looking at me.
Funny.
with.
Yeah, all the Democrats are, the
They're
party
in
people are
parlor, in
there,
the
and you're in
parlor.
the front row.
I'm there in the parlor, getting him to sign. He yells out, "Hillary, Hillary!" He's into the crowd. She comes out. She sits down. She introduces herself, signs the poster. I've got the poster someplace. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, go Hawks. So I've got these two things, and I'm just saying, thank you, this has been great. I'm thinking, boy, the arrows, the daggers
Oh, yeah.
are coming at me. And I'm turning around, I see Chuck Propilio. I said, Governor, I want to introduce you to my good friend, head of the Democratic Party, Chuck Propilio. So I walk over to Chuck Propilio.
You're introducing him.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then I say, I'm exiting. It's time to leave. So I leave with poster, picture, autograph in hand, and out of there.
In shorts,
In short.
to meet the president, to be.
Yeah,
That's funny.
that is funny.
Something people don't know, obviously, you've interviewed a lot of people, and yeah, it's some local people, but I'll tell you about a significant interview you did local, family-wise, but you've interviewed a lot of politicians, sports figures, Chautauquans. Anybody stand out?
Yeah, Pete Best. Pete Best. Who's Pete Best?
Yeah,
This
I
is-
need to hear.
Yeah,
I think I know, but go
I
ahead.
don't know. There's people ask us all the time, because I've done 4,000 interviews, and Ed's been seen most of them, but most of it, and Pete Best was here. And so the backstory's better than the actual interview. I'm at in Bemis Point. So I'm at Bemis Point, I'm having wings at the casino. And Cindy and I are just chewing away, and there on the wall, poster says, next Friday, week hence, the Pete Best Band. Pete Best Band. I'm looking at this. Can't be. Can't be. So Steve Carlson, owner of the casino, walks
Yep.
by. I go, Steve, that's not the Pete Best, are you? Is it? He goes, yeah. Pete Best, the original drummer of the Beatles, is going to be at the casino in a week.
How?
How does nobody know about this? I've had a hard time getting the publicity out. This is an original Beatle. Before Ringo Starr, there was Pete Best.
Yeah, unbelievable.
How does that happen? He goes, I haven't been able to get the news out. I go, you have the number of the publicity agent? Well, he's in London. I go, can you give it to me? So he does. So I, over the weekend, leave a voice message. On the following Monday at the office, I get this call. Hello, Mr. Peterson, this is author so-and-so from London, and I understand you are interested in interviewing Mr. Peter Best. I said, yes, I am. He goes, what do you want to talk about? Well, Peter's career, with the Beatles stuff. Well, we can make that accommodation. He's playing Friday evening at the casino. When would you like him? When will he should be in the area around Thursday. All this British accent.
Love it.
I go, I tell you what, Jackson Center, 5:30 Thursday. And I will interview him. We will make that accommodation. And he confirmed it. I didn't know if he'd show up. So I called, because it was not a public event, because people should go publicly to see him in the
Right.
casino. But I reached out to WJTN, WKSN, the cable station, Buffalo News Network, Erie News Network, everybody that we had any publicity contact with. I got an original Beatle. I'm going to interview him. Do you want a piece of this?
Big time.
Places. Hey, remember this ad? Place is packed. Place is packed. Place is packed.
Wow.
Because there's a Beatle. All right. So, and I told everybody, I said, I had the cameras. There's cameras all over the place. I go, only I am going to ask questions. None of you guys. You can tape it, deal with it as you see fit. But, and I'm the guy. I don't want you guys asking the question. And the other question everybody asks, what happened? And so I'm thinking mentally, how do I get to the question? How do I get to that question
Oh, yeah.
that you want to ask? So, very innovative. He's sitting down and goes, Thank you for coming, da-da-da-da. And I said, you married? And I knew the answer to this question. Yeah, how long have you been married? 40 years. You got kids? Yeah, I got 2. Yeah, you got grandkids? Yeah, I've got 3. What are their names? And I'm sure he's thinking, what the hell is this? And, one of them happens to be, let's say, Henry. And, Henry, how old's Henry? 5 years old. So if Henry comes up on your lap and sits down and says, Grandpa, tell me about the Beatles. What do you tell Henry? It was just a way to get into it. Mm-hmm. So we got into it. Well, it hasn't happened, but I suspect I would say this. And off we went about the Beatles, the story of the Beatles. His mom, and I don't want to reach, it's on video, it's on YouTube.
Wow.
But
Wow.
how did he meet McCartney? How did he meet Lennon? How did he meet Harrison? And ultimately it worked its way to the question. They'd gone to Frankfurt, they played together, da-da-da-da, he comes back, and all of a sudden Brian Epstein, who was the manager, comes in one day and tells them that, hey, the boys have decided they're going to go with Ringo Starr, who was playing in a separate band in a pub area where they played, in Liverpool. 5 or 6 bands would always play there. So he was one of the drummers in another band. So they selected him to replace Peter in the restaurant, the bar, the pub, which was owned by his mother. So the pub.
Oh, my.
So that's how he knew about it. And he goes, do you know the reason why? He goes, to this day, I really don't. Has anybody ever talked to you? No. Paul McCartney, because my band has played before them. We, would pass, it was just hi, but never have talked about it.
Wow.
Now, this is many, many years after that. Subsequently, I've learned that they cut this box set out, recently, and he got pick a number, $10 million for his, his share of the
No kidding.
early recordings, because money is no object at this point.
Right.
But point is, I'm way out of my comfort zone. I'm talking to a frickin' Beatle.
Because you had the nerve to ask.
Yeah, get nerve gas. Exactly. I said,
And not a lot of people have that kind of nerve.
yep.
Can we go off for a minute, Ed?
You want to stop?
What do you say?
You want to stop, or do you just pause?
I want to pause. Are you comfortable that I covered everything, Norm?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I mean, we go on
We
forever.
can do a sup too if we need to.
Huh?
We can do a supplement too if you
No,
think
no,
of
no,
something
no,
later.
no, we can go on forever there are stories within stories. I mean, the Jackson Center, in and of itself, there's a gazillion stories.
Really?
The baseball, a gazillion stories. I think we've hit the highlights for my family to kind of know generally. I mean, if somebody digs in at some point and wanted to know talk about some baseball stories and all
How
that stuff.
about, I'll do this question that you and I were discussing in a minute. Is there a law story? Is there something
Yes,
about a
yes.
case?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Give me your Greg, well, you're known for, you could say corporate transactional stuff, which is not very exciting. Have you had anything which is really noteworthy? And the answer is I do.
Okay.
And I got 2
We're on-
stories. I
we're
have 2
on?
stories.
So, we talked about your background with Sherry and the firm, and it's very obvious that you worked with corporations and businesses. And ordinarily, somebody might say to you, that sounds like a yawner. Business, looking at profit and loss statements, considering corporate contracts. Got any interesting stories about your experience in the corporate world as a lawyer?
Well, there'll be 2 stories, one of which I just want to make sure I make note. I've been the general counsel for the Industrial Development Agency since 1987.
Wow.
And the source of that, and this is important, was through Jim Summer. Jim Summer, who founded the entity that's called the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency. Jim, like Sherry, and he was the North County Sherry Cadwell. Jim, incredible guy. I wish you were here to answer the question because I don't have a good answer, but he somehow sought me out when he decided to exit as being general counsel for the County of Chautauqua IDA in '87. He looked around and was looking for a younger person who had horsepower. Now, not necessarily me having horsepower, but had the firm behind it. So Jim met with me, interviewed me, a couple hours at a lunch at the White Horse Inn, at the White Inn in Fredonia, White Inn, and went back to the powers to be, Paul Sandberg at the IDA, and suggested that he was going to retire and would like to bring in Greg, younger, and who's got corporate experience, and has all the horses of Phillips Lytle, which bond counsel and tax people and all of that stuff. So it was Jim who introduced me, got me into that role, and I'm indebted. So he, in that one aspect of my life, which is to this day, I'm still their general counsel, and I'm working in other people with Phillips Lytle into my role. So I just want to say that. With regards to the practice of law, my actual practice has been, as you would say, transactional. You know, does it lend itself to the story du jour? No. But I got to tell this one, because it really highlights probably my career. Judge Lee Town Adams had as his sole clerk my wife, Cynthia Howard Peterson. And so I was precluded from being a law guardian, anything. I was precluded. She resigned as law clerk to become an attorney with Wright in Hampton, subsequently their first female partner, but she left. So the following Monday at a calendar call, now I was never at a calendar call, never. If I was there, it was only because Bob Sharp sent me there. So calendar call, and I heard about this later. Judge Lee Town Adams goes, in his big bravado, I have an announcement, a sad announcement with a happy ending. My law clerk for 6 years, Cynthia Howard Peterson, has resigned, and I will miss her terribly. But with that fact, opens up a slot for a law guardian to be appointed, her husband. Her husband. So we have one today. We have two. It was a felony, same incident. And I'm going to want to report that we appoint, and she looks, Bill Young. Remember Bill? He was a heavy set. Mr. Young, if you would note, and it goes down the list. Let's see. Typical. We're going to appoint for these two people this attorney, J. Howard Peterson. J. Howard Peterson. Now, J. Howard was an attorney. He's had to be 75 years old, retired, and in Jamestown, did press editing for the Jamestown Post-Journal, but he was on a list as an active attorney. He missed it. He blew it, because I was Cynthia Howard Peterson, and he had in his mind, so J. Howard Peterson. So he gets it. He gets appointed. And the places, J. Howard, who they hardly ever see, but he was still...
Not a court guy.
Definitely not a court guy. So he gets the two. J. Howard freaks out. Subsequently gets corrected to me. So I'm appointed for these two guys who, as it turned out, were recidivists. And for the camera, they had been previously convicted of a felony. So they're now charged with a single crime, these two guys. So my job was to go into the jail and interview them. Like, holy cow. I went and met them, I interviewed them, and then I come out and go, I don't know what to do. So I called John Plum. And he goes, Greg, make an omnibus motion. Right. What's an omnibus motion? I'll send you the form. He sends me the form where essentially I fill out the form, names, etc., and go to court to make a motion, for the record, that it should be dismissed for judicial expediency, some ridiculous. And so Scott Harley was the assistant district attorney. And so we went on the appointed day, and I didn't know which side I'm on, the right side, the left side. So I get up there, Mr. Peterson, I see we're, Lee Town Adams called me. Mr. Peterson, you got a motion before us? He goes, yes, I'm submitting an omnibus motion on behalf of these two guys. And I think my papers speak for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I said nothing. The papers speak for themselves. Sit down. Scott Harley goes, on the active injustice. You know, all of these guys have been prior. I mean, we have a case a mile long. And he goes, all right, I've given this deep consideration, says Lee Town Adams, and I've reviewed the papers by Mr. Peterson, reviewed the papers by you, Mr. Harley, and I'm going to grant your motion, Mr. Peterson, that we dismiss this case. Scott went apoplectic, you know, and I knew Scotty, and he knew me that I was a nobody. And he just dismissed the case. Out of hand. Boom. End of case. This matter is adjourned. That was the end of the motion calendar. I'm walking out. I don't even know what to say to Scott. Scott is pissed.
Boy.
He is really mad because this case is so. Judge Adams's secretary came out. Oh man, I just missed her name. Senior moment, and says, "Come into the chambers. The judge wants to see you."
Tony.
She was from Fresno. She was from
Tony.
Forestville. Older lady.
Oh, no, that's not the one I'm thinking of.
Golly. So, anyways, went in. He's there playing cards, you know, doing what he does. And he goes, "Sit down, gentlemen." And I thought, you're probably wondering why I made the ruling I made. And Judge Scott goes, "Yeah, you're kidding me." He goes, "Well, I just got word this morning that these two guys had just been convicted of a crime in Monroe County. So they're recidivist. That's their second time. We want them out of here. They got to be gone. They're on their way to Monroe County. So for judicial expediency, Mr. Peterson, you won your case, and you got rid of 2 in 1.
You're 2-0.
2-0. I go, that was it. That was it. So forever, I will be that guy who never lost a criminal law case, never to be appointed again.
You never got appointed again?
Never. Well, I got appointed for family court matters a lot. Judge Hartley would appoint me because he wanted somebody that had no idea about, and I admitted it.
Yeah.
I had no idea procedure. I had no idea. But I could be a Solomon. I mean, I could listen to the case and lend some degree of humanity to the whole thing. And that's why he got me. So, I mean, I probably had 10 of those. And then, as would have it, the good law gods decided you had to be certified.
Oh, right, that's the new.
You had to get qualified, certified to be in family court, which is absolutely appropriate. A bunch to have us guys who really had no knowledge about family court because we just happen to have a law degree was insane.
That's a tough area of practice.
Yeah, tough. So that's my practice.
So let me conclude with, I think, probably the most important question I'm going to ask you, and that is, aside from our family questions, which we covered very thoroughly, what is the most meaningful aspect of your Robert H. Jackson Center adventure?
I've had that question asked, and I've thought about it a lot. And what this center, certainly we had 25 years of activities, and I'm very proud of that, incredibly proud. And you can go on YouTube and see that we've had almost 30 million hits. 30 million hits.
No kidding.
Of things we've done here.
Wow.
Ed has done, we have done. It's been, it's a great sense of pride. But the fact that we were able to get the federal courthouse in Buffalo named after Robert H. Jackson was something I'm very proud of. And I must say, personally proud, because it didn't happen automatically. It was a great deal of politicking with a small p, maybe politicking with a big P. And we had to engage an awful lot of people from the Erie County Erie County Congressional, Brian Higgins specifically, to be convinced that that was appropriate naming. He had to call. Brian had to call. The recommendation, then it required congressional approval. So it required all of his congressional colleagues. And at the expense of boring you to tears, I'm going to give you a brief highlight, because I've never done this, because this is this is something you would appreciate. There was a editorial in the Buffalo Evening News talking about the cost overruns of the federal courthouse. And it was just an editorial saying how much money they spent. They had to go through plans, changing, da-da, 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 and basically saying this is incredible waste of taxpayer money. And they don't even have a name on the facility. They're at the bottom. And they said the names that have been approached were William Donovan, and Matt Urban.
And what?
Matt Urban. Matt Urban was a World War II hero. Most highly decorated World War II guy from Buffalo.
There was another name.
And the other name at the bottom of it said, and they haven't even considered the most logical name, Robert Jackson, who was a justice of the Supreme Court from Western New York. They haven't even done that. So everybody in my firm pulled out that Buffalo Evening News editorial, circled it, saying you should do something about that. Never, absolutely never on my radar screen about the federal courthouse. So Brian was our congressman here at the time. He had been here. He was here when we had Rehnquist. He was here when we had Roberts. He was here when we had law dialogues. He would show up.
Nice.
Not so much to be the celebrity congressman. He was just interested.
Interesting.
So I knew him enough that I could get to him and ask the question. Hey, I read this, and should I be involved on behalf of Jackson? He goes, sure. Hey, Greg, it's not going to happen. That decision, or my recommendation, shouldn't say decision, my recommendation, which has to start with me, will not happen for years. But I got to deal with politics because most people think it's going to be Donovan. I mean, there's Sal Martocci, love you, Sal, and others, including members in my firm who were actively participating because the Donovan building had been knocked down.
Right.
So it'd be appropriate to have the courthouse be named after, head of the Office of Strategic Services, William Donovan, U.S. Attorney, all that stuff. I go, well, how do I do this? So he's giving me a tutorial of sending out books and a letter to every member of all the congressmen,
Oh, my.
including
House
the two
Representatives
senators,
and senators.
Schumer and Gillibrand. And so off we went, sending out the DeAngelo book to everyone and saying, we would strongly like to consider and nominate and advocate on behalf of Robert Jackson, the only United States justice to come from Western New York, to be the name on the federal courthouse, which is, of course, justice. That seemed logical. So we did it. And every time Schumer was here, I had Raleigh or Stan on him, like,
Yeah.
race son, whatever. So they're meeting him, talking about, we'd like you to do this. I'm up there talking with, everybody, including Scrutiny, Arcara, all the judicial people who can't really come out and say anything. But privately, they're saying, it's a no-brainer. But we'll do what we can within our realms. They cannot publicly say anything. Meeting at Higgins' office almost monthly, bringing stuff. And John Barrett was speaking at the University of Buffalo Law School, the Mitchell Lecture. I mean, we were doing everything to get the fact that Jackson was a Western New York guy, not a Jamestown guy, Western New York, because he did, in fact, shortly, but he did briefly live in New Buffalo and, of course, everything else. We had the appellate division find his old court papers, his application, and had a big ceremony. We did everything, hoping against hope. And then there was the announcement, there's going to be the announcement of the opening of the courthouse, without a name.
Without a name.
Without a name, no name. So the opening of the courthouse, and we were there. And Scrutiny, this was all Judge Scrutiny, and I hope you listen to this, Judge, but this was his finesse. They were going to open the courthouse without naming it, but he was bringing in all the artillery. Mayor Brown, Congressman Higgins, head of the court system, the chief of the court of the Second Circuit, I mean, you name it. All to talk about this new courthouse. And they gratuitously, people would say, and we hope we come back again, we can name it after Robert Jackson.
Oh, my.
Robert Jackson. And Congressman Higgins said, I'm going to go, it actually tipped us off. He'd called Stan, this is behind the scenes, only you'll appreciate this.
Yes.
Behind the scenes, he calls Stan, who was the chairman of the board here at the time, and said, I'm going to go to on the Congressional House floor, and I'm going to announce my recommendation that this should be named the Robert H. Jackson Federal Courthouse.
Wow.
So he calls Stan. Now, Stan calls me. Fortunately for me, I was not home. So he leaves me a voice message. The most excited I've ever heard Stan Landini, you know
Oh, yeah.
as well as anybody. Greg, you're not going to believe this. Congressman Brian Higgins tomorrow is going to announce, da-da-da-da, give me a call. So I kept the tape.
That's
And
funny.
it's now on YouTube. And so I called him back, and he goes, yeah, it's fantastic, da-da-da. So in fact, the next day, he did. So shortly thereafter, again, now the naming of the courthouse, and there's not a ceremony there, he just started the process. Schumer had not weighed in.
Oh,
We didn't know where he was coming from. He never told Lundin. He had been, nor his roommate in the assembly, Raleigh. I mean, again, anytime that he was in Jamestown, or in the South County, or Chautauqua County, because he came once a year,
oh, yeah.
I was there. Raleigh was there. Stan was there if he was here. To see him, to buttonhole, he would never commit. So finally, this non-naming, the opening of the courthouse, everybody's talking about Higgins, recommendation, and Byron Brown. Again, everybody else, it'd be great if Jackson. Schumer's the last to go. This is Scretany at his best. Schumer gets up, and we're all there. Raleigh, Stan, myself, Randy Sweeney, as guests of the court, waiting for Schumer. And he says, finally, well, as everybody should know, I have from day one been an advocate for naming this courthouse the Robert H. Jackson Federal Court. And I will introduce a bill in the Senate tomorrow.
Oh, my.
That was his announcement. So then he immediately, left the stage. Then came back. He left because we wanted to hug him. Stan, Ron, all his buddies. Thanks. He left. He just left. And then came back quickly and went to the bank of cameras. There was the camera bank, with all those cameras. He went up and said, I'm just here to say that Jackson, and left again. We tracked him down to thank him, because he's literally just walking out the door. He didn't want to talk to anybody. And we subsequently had dinner with Brian, who had no idea.
He didn't?
No. Because
Wow.
there was a lot going on between the two, which was,
Close to the vest, man, to the end.
a lot of strain
Interesting
on other things, a
political
lot of
story.
strain. Who was getting credit for this? Now, this is a credit deal.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
Political event.
but Brian, and later would talk about the fact that, I may or may not when I self-edit this, but keep this in, but Brian kind of then finally knew that Chuck wanted to be the first to say it.
Got
Though
it.
historically and precedent-wise, it was the congressperson in the district would be the first to go.
Oh, interesting.
That was his feeling. Chuck subsequently felt differently. So he kept Brian hanging out there.
But we got it done. You got it
Got it
done.
done. So 6 years from the date of that particular editorial.
William Donovan, right? First name?
First name, William Donovan.
Phillips Lytle Building's in the place of William Donovan's building.
That's right. And in the basement, there is and this is part of the politics with a small p. I love it, because I was just watching, observed all this, kept a very close eye on it, but I was watching Brian, the master.
Oh, he's
And I want
he's a
Brian
great
to be here
congressman.
to interview the master about how he subsequently put a big display in the Phillips Lytle building that building there, of Donovan. It's a big, you go in the
That's
hotel, Marriott,
Yep,
basement, Donovan. He made sure that happened.
that's cool.
And then Matt Urban, because there are a lot of big people talk about Matt
Yeah,
Urban.
our friend Sal Martocci was, lobbying hard for it, rightfully, because he respected the man very
Absolutely.
much. And you respected that. But that's a big deal. The Robert H. Jackson Federal Court, that name ain't going anywhere for a long time.
That's the point. That forever, you read about it all the time. It's in the news. Nothing we do whatsoever. But when you go there, to Judge Scranton, Judge Arcara, and we thank them. I mean, I don't say they did a lot, but when Roberts was here, it was Scranton who introduced Roberts at the Athenaeum Hotel, the dinner we had,
Very interesting.
and I had Arcara introduce him at the luncheon we had.
Wow,
So that
Yeah, oh, yeah.
was my way to say
thank you.
thank you. So politics with a small
What
p.
comes around goes around.
Yeah, and it's
And there's nothing wrong with that.
no, and
because
and subsequently
For the right thing. Yep,
Subsequently, Judge Scranton, a guy named Michael Purley, who's an attorney with Hurwitz and Fine.
yes, very
and
fine
Michael-
gentleman.
Terrific, and he's very much involved with ABOTA.
With what?
ABOTA, the Trial Lawyers Association.
Oh, okay, yeah.
American something trial lawyers. He, together with me, Mike, me, and Judge Scranton, for 10 years, hosted an event at the Robert H. Jackson Federal Courthouse called the Otis Lecture, which is well-publicized. All the school kids show up, and we talk about the Constitution. It's always on Constitution Day.
Nice.
And we've had people that we've known, from Korematsu and Tinker, and we've had the Barnett case, things we've generated the ideas, but they've run with it,
Neat.
but they give us credit. So I just got a big award, and I don't like to talk about awards, but I did at the Western District of New York Federal Court System gave me an award, and Mike and I an award for distinguished
How
work.
neat.
So Judge Wolford gave that to us.
Yeah, I did not mention all of those awards, but let me just say this from a fellow attorney's point of view. It's nice when one of ours gets acknowledged. And you were ahead of the line on the super lawyers, best lawyers, Buffalo Business First list of 250 list, top 250. New York State Bar Association's Youth and Citizenship Committee Distinguished Service Award. Obviously, rightfully, Jamestown Area Chamber, Chautauqua Leadership Award. It's incredible, the awards you've received, and there's just not enough time to say all the wonderful things you've done. Let me close with this. You and I have always thought and said openly that there's only one Russ Dietrich. I'm here to tell you there's only one Greg Peterson. Thank you for everything you've done for the bar, for our community, and for those of us that grew up on the south side. You made us all proud. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Wonderful.
I'm a hugger, remember?
You are.
Ed, gotta get the Swedish guys and hug them.